4 years old getting like a first proper drum kit, and you're like, oh wow, look at this. My parents like fully support this, and new kit, trash it, new kit, trash it, new kit, trash it. You know, the therapeutic side of like getting to beat the crap out of something. Do you know what I mean? Giving it one. Yeah, proper like obsessed.
Are you really cavemen?
literally. The nerves for any gig as well. That's the other thing. Like I get nervous for everything. So even today. For a while, I was very like critical of other drummers of like, you know, oh, they're not as good as me. I think like lots of losses that I've had along the way. You know, a mate of mine, Matt, he had like a heart condition and he passed away some years ago. But I've always felt like kind of I'm carrying the torch for him a bit, you know, in everything I do. So I sat in the AO Arena in Manchester on one side. It's like, how far off is that stage over there? And, you know, I could be on that stage. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I could do this.
One more song, 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 one more song.
This is like a Stone Island equivalent, but it's pretty green, isn't it?
Pretty green.
It's pretty green.
Check this out. Nice.
It's smooth.
I think that's my one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the One More Songcast. We are back with are we calling this season 3 now, are we? Series 3.
It can be whatever season you want because I've lost count.
I think series 2 ended up being about 10 guests in it or something. So
Nice.
we're back. It's been about, we were working it out before, weren't we? It's been about 7 months since we've done a guest episode for various reasons, but we're finally here with a guest, and I think it's a very popular guest in the original music scene specifically. It's Mr. Jon Raynor. How you doing, John? You all right?
Good.
Yeah,
And
it's
you?
been a long time coming, this, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We've done a lot of where you up to sort of thing, and we've finally made it. So we knew it had to be you we had to get in this session.
Big fan of the podcast and all that. Gets on the live streams.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And if you've seen our T-shirts, you were the ones who kind of inspired us to do that.
A little bit,
suggested
I guess.
it, didn't you?
Yeah, you were sending me some designs and stuff, and I thought, like, yeah, it's cool. It looks really good. Like, I have yet to get one, so I will get on that, boys.
We'll sort you out, John. We'll sort you out. Yeah. So, how would you describe yourself, John? Obviously, we know you're a drummer, but is that? Have you been drumming all your life?
I would say for the most part, I do play other instruments like guitar, bass, sing and double up and do stuff like that. So I can sing and play drums, sing and play guitar, play bass, play keys, that kind of thing, the same thing. But yeah, I've done plenty of stuff for ages, just music, just a general music lover. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just love like listening to music and just getting into like the nitty gritty of it all and stuff. And yeah, proper like obsessed,
Wicked.
I would say.
That's good. Before we go into obviously your life and how you've got to this point, first of all, gigging wise this weekend, what you been up to?
Friday night was Black Bull in Longton for Longton Live, so we're on at 10 in like the back corner of the place, and it was absolutely packed. It was a wicked gig, really good. Then Saturday night was at the Ramp in Horwich with Will Edgar, young lad off the Voice Kids, and then was in the studio yesterday with my own band County Pilots.
Nice.
With the Grand and Clitheroe, so nice day out. Sort of in a little box for a little while, and like trying to get in and out every now and again for some fresh air and stuff. But yeah, it's been busy.
Have you done Longton Live before?
I've done Longton Live last year, but they forgot to put me on the original list, even though I said it, and then they stuck me in. I think it was like the church hall.
Yeah,
And,
the village hall thing.
Yeah, there was a ukulele club. There was a play on after that, and
Nice.
then I went on and everyone had cleared. So I was absolutely fuming, to be fair.
It's just you,
So
like
it was
one guy at the back.
Yeah, I think I had about
mate.
5 people in this massive venue. But you know, those events can be very, very, very good. I'm not gonna sit here and knock it. We did Chorley Live a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Like loads of people that don't normally come out for it, and they're willing to listen to anything as well, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Was this County Pilots you were with them for Longton Live?
Yeah. County Pilots Friday night.
So how does a typical set? We'll get into it all, but how does a typical set for County Pilots work? Is it mainly your originals and a few covers, or mainly covers and a few originals?
For sort of secular, like our own gigs, if we're supporting someone or headlining, it's a lot more originals.
Yeah.
If it's Longton Live, it's a lot more covers.
Yeah.
But we try and do like the covers that like we like, but we know everyone else likes.
Yeah.
We do put a couple originals in because of like people that follow us and that kind of thing. So we've done Penwitham Live, and like my dad plays at Penwitham Cricket Club, so all the younger guys there follow us. So they come down to the gig, and after every song, it's like pilots. After every song, it's hilarious, honestly.
Yeah. Cool. Have they got to sort of know your original ones as well, sort of thing, which is nice, isn't it?
Yeah. We've had times where like we've played, and then it's like, oh, you missed this one out, and it was like, oh, sorry, like, we'll get it in next time.
Yeah, nice.
So, how would you describe that feeling when you've got people singing along to your own original stuff as well?
I mean, if I spot anyone singing our songs, I'm just like, wow, that's amazing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't expect it. You don't sort of go to a gig and think like, oh, everyone's going to know this song or that song or that song. It's just like you play it, and when you see people sort of, you can see people mouthing the words and singing along, all that kind of stuff. It's a bit like, oh yeah, like that's it's the best feeling kind of thing. But also like my thing's always like trying to, as a drummer primarily, trying to get people to dance.
Yeah,
that's the main thing for me. If people are like just doing this or bobbing the heads, tapping the feet, whatever, like that's the main thing for me. So
doing your job sort of that way,
yeah. I know. I mean, if people are dancing, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so.
Definitely. I threw my tune in for the first time at a gig
Nice.
yesterday. It was
how did that go?
It was good, to be fair. Yeah, you don't know how it's going to go when it's just acoustic and guitar, but it was decent. I used my kick pedal, which worked quite nice. I think, but yeah, it was all right, to be fair.
I was tired to listen on the way in myself.
Oh yeah,
loving it.
Get them streams up.
Yeah,
get them streams up. Streams.
Do you still do that thing after releasing a tune, like where you're like constantly on Spotify for artists or sing?
I'm not, but the others in the band are.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Particularly Matt and Adam, they're the ones who are like, oh, it's gone up to this today, like, or like after a month, it's like, oh,
yeah, especially when it's live in that first week and you're just like watching it every 5 minutes.
It's definitely whilst
I remember, have you heard of the Rafters?
Yeah.
Well, Nathan, I go and teach in schools, and Nathan's the lead singer of the Rafters, and on the day like Defined by released our last tune.
Yeah.
They released the tune on the same day, so it was like us two, like in the breaks, going, "How's your streams? How's your streams?" But I think both of us had a really
like
slow start, so we're like, "Oh God, I've got like 50." He's like, "Yeah, we're only on 100. It's fucking shit."
Just listen on each phone, kind of thing. Like, I'll give you a stream if you give me a stream.
Thanks to the lad on TikTok who called me Cole Palmer. I'll take that one. I just replied to him saying I play like him and all. Just never got picked up.
That's the one.
I couldn't, do what... Actually, I could do what they do. And I think they knew that even back then. Probably what spurred them on.
We've got a five-a-side team. He's our goalkeeper at the minute. Hybrid. You were a hybrid centre-back and now you're a hybrid goalkeeper. So.
I think one of the lads compared me to James Milner.
Yeah, nice.
Has he ever played in net, has he? Yeah.
I've not seen it if he has, but I reckon he'd probably do a job,
He'd be all right, I reckon, yeah.
So we used to start our podcast with what does music mean to you, blah, blah, blah. We're going to more start it from your sort of first memories of music around the house.
Okay.
Were your parents very much into music, or siblings, or,
Mum and Dad have always they've listened to different stuff throughout, like growing up and stuff. My mum was like always like, remember Katie Malua?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that kind of stuff, things like that. My dad was a big. It was really weird because it was like it'd be between like Take That, Robbie Williams, and then like Oasis and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'd always kind of liked the pop stuff, liked the jazz stuff a bit still, but kind of. My thing growing up was then like, tapping on pots and pans when you're a kid and that kind of thing on the kitchen floor. And, mum and dad, again, my nana, people like that, always just like, all the time. And like grew up in church. So it was always like lots of like drums and stuff like that. Yeah. Always sat next to the drummer in church, that kind of thing. Well, yeah, it's always been like, I feel like I've always kind of listened to like everything really. From like whether it's sort of like the more like I don't know if you want to say like churchy gospel stuff, and then get into like all the secular stuff as well. Like I love both just as much as each other. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I've always been very like rhythmic. My grandma and granddad have always been like really big. They were big Beatles fans growing up and stuff. So like then it was always getting like little record players out and stuff like that, playing it to me and that kind of thing. Just like absorbed it straight away and that kind of thing. And drumming wise, it was just like always kind of like be on YouTube watching every kind of drummer out there.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So
what was the reason for you picking up the sticks rather than naturally gravitating towards guitar? And that when you're that young, was there something you saw or?
I don't know whether it was just like the therapeutic side of like getting to beat the crap out of something. Do you know what I mean? Giving it one.
Aggressive
it's that,
child.
or it's I don't know. I always sort of went between like I'd be like, oh mum, I want guitar lessons. So I'd go and get guitar lessons, and they'd be like, oh, you got practice, and I'd be like, I don't want to practice. And I'd drum lessons straight away. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough, yeah.
Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then it was sort of like eventually I was like, which one do I prefer out of the two? And it was definitely always kind of the drums. Yeah, so it's always been kind of like, you know, from stuff like my granddad would be driving, and whilst we're sitting at the red lights tapping on the steering wheel and stuff like that, and just have always kind of like been surrounded by like rhythm and music, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're saying you were watching on YouTube, what drummers specifically were you watching and inspired by in those early days?
Loads of different drummers. I mean, like, to throw names out there's a guy called Tony Royster Jr. He's played with like Jay-Z, Beyonce, Katy Perry. I think he's out with Joss Stone as well. Yeah. He was kind of like one of the first drummers. Like, got into like jazz a bit later on in time, and you know, I know we'll probably go into that in a bit anyway, but a guy called Buddy Rich was like insane drummer, really, really sort of technical jazz drummer.
Off his head as well, wasn't he?
Oh, just mental, like just on another planet, and like very like arrogant and stuff like that, but I guess he had to be, do you know what I mean, to sort of like make his point, I guess. Yeah, and like church drummers, different people like that, like, you know, I'd always watch like drummers that sort of attached to a band, but then you see them like, oh, they play for that person, oh, but they also play for them and them, and you know, like you just connect all the dots of like, oh, so you can be one musician that plays for like everyone. Yeah. Which I've grown to sort of love to do. As well as, you know, being kind of set in a band as well. So, yeah, it's just funny, like the different people you run into drumming wise as well. You know, like people that like teachers of mine. My old drum teacher, John Hicks. You ever watched? I'm trying to think the TV show where it was always like jazz, nice, and he'd look like right down the camera. John, I can't think of his name, and but that character in that TV show is based off one of my drum teachers, John Hicks.
Oh right. Okay.
So he teaches at Rimmers in Leyland actually. I don't know whether he still does or not, but yeah, he must be getting on now.
Wow, yeah.
But yeah, sorry, going into my own sort of drum obsessed world.
No, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So growing up in a church then, in a religious family, I'm guessing. I've been in gospel churches. One of my friends is in a gospel church, and the music is massively impressive. Were you growing up around, you know, the music side of the church?
Yeah, I would have said, yeah. It was always kind of like just watching the drummers there, and even like guitarists and stuff. I ended up playing guitar first in church, that kind of thing, and it was kind of just like between the two, and eventually kind of got dissuaded from guitar, and it was just like, you know, watching mates of mine that were like a few years older than me playing church, and you know, mum and dad's mates as well when they were growing up, because you know, they were only younger at the time, and just have like, I've grown up listening to that kind of stuff and like learning to play it as well. Like still do today. Do you know what I mean? Playing a church in Preston. So I've kind of always played in church really.
And from my mate's experience as well, they seem to get everybody involved in it. He has a hand in harmonies and that kind of thing. And it's I always quite like about the church stuff as well. They put a lot of effort into their sound. I always think, like even when you go on YouTube and you're looking for ways to improve, it's always like for worship, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you notice,
yeah.
I've noticed that,
especially in America.
Yeah.
I think that's always good. Whenever you go to a church, it always sounds really good. Yeah. Like they always put a lot of effort into the sound.
I think because of the natural reverbs in a church, if you get that wrong, it's going to sound horrible because all the bad frequencies will bounce everywhere.
Exactly.
They focus very much on a quiet stage, don't they? So a lot of them use like things like a helix for a guitarist or whatever, just because you get too much stage volume, you're knackered, aren't you?
Yeah.
But the other thing about church musicians is the technique of them is absolutely unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, like lots of us kind of, you know, we use it in a way, sort of like having played in church, it's nice to think like, you know, when you go into like the secular world of doing like original stuff or like covers or whatever, you're a lot more used to adjusting your feel and how loud or quiet you play. You're used to kind of like controlling your own dynamics, things like that. I've grown up in a church where there's no like screens around the drums. You always get that in a lot of churches and stuff. That's kind of like to control the sound again. The church I'm in now, it's like screens and like a roof and like walls around the back of it to properly like contain it. Like everyone's like, what's the fish tank all about, Jono? And I'm like, honestly,
do you prefer it with that on, or does it kind of not limit you? But obviously, you're saying about the dynamics. Does that sort of make it more stonewall kind of thing?
Kind of. I mean, I'm a hard hitter. Like I know that. Loads of people are like, Johnny, you're the noisiest fucking drummer in the world, honestly. And but yeah, it's one of those that it's like it's more controlled kind of thing for our tech team and stuff that work really hard to do what they do, and they do so well. There's a guy on our sound team, James, who is like, done a degree in like being a sound tech and stuff like that, properly qualified, and works for like a company, I can't think what the name is. It's like Rock Tech or something like that. Yeah. They go and like rig all kinds of massive venues around the country, and but it's more like church venues as well, which is cool.
This is what I mean, though. They seem to put a lot of effort into the sound. Like, whereas, let's say, for example, I know it's nothing the same, but you go and do an open mic or a local gig or whatever. There's the effort with the sound sometimes isn't there, even with some of these smaller original gigs. But there always does seem to be in the church. I always think. I know some will be different, but yeah.
No, it's a funny world to live in sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like doing that stuff, and but yeah, as long as I get to play drums in it, that's definitely the main thing for me.
100%.
So when did you sort of start to realise, okay, I'm getting pretty good at this? Because
I mean, it was always kind of like growing up being a baby, and then like 4 years old getting like a first proper drum kit, and you're like, oh wow, look at this! Like my parents like fully support this, and break one and it's like new kit, trash it, new kit, trash it, new kit, trash it. Like for ages and ages and ages, break sticks and cymbals and all that kind of stuff. I think it was probably like as I was getting into high school that I was a bit like, okay, like I know I want to keep doing this. And like lessons were a bit more serious, and like I got into sort of like practicing like hard. Like I coming from school, and no matter the neighbours being annoyed or whatever by the sound of it, it was always so I was like, I can hear you over the TV, and I'm like, I don't care.
I was going to ask you about that. It's not the most accessible. Well, accessible may be the wrong word, but you come home from school, you can play your guitar quietly in your bedroom.
Yeah.
Did you find that you were pissing people off a lot playing your drum? Did you have to go in garage or something like that?
It kind of started where it was like I was set up in the corner of my room, and then it was like wooden floor because I'm like asthmatic, I don't like the dust, that kind of thing, so just then made the sound even worse. And then it was sort of like, oh, go down in the garage, and we kind of like halved it off with some like shelves and like curtains around it and stuff like that, and then all through like college and uni as well, it was even like in the garage basically. I'd come home from college or uni or whatever and go and sweat it out for a couple of hours and play in the garage and stuff, and like just play along to tunes or learn like pieces of music or work on different like different fills, things like that, like all the time, and just trying to like hone my skills like whichever way I could. But even just like being as far as it being kind of more like just loving music anyway, that it wasn't really sort of like, oh, I'm doing this just to be a better drummer kind of thing. It was always like, well, I want to do it to be a better musician as well. Like, you get all these people like, drummers just make noise, they're not musicians. What are you talking about? So, but it's always been like, lots of practice and kind of just like, it was definitely, to answer your question, it was a lot like, sort of high school, college sort of age that I was like, and I know I'm doing well at this. And, lots of people start asking like, oh, can you play drums on this? And can you do this? Can you do that? So, yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. What were you sort of playing along to in those early days? Like you say you were going and playing along to tracks. And
it would really vary. Like I'm trying to think back to like, used to watch Usher's drummer a lot. Aaron Spears, I think he's called. And it was always a track like Caught Up.
Right. Oh yeah,
Usher. Yeah. Caught up, got me feeling caught up, don't know what it is. And like I'd be like jamming along to that, lots of like crazy fills, and I always grew up kind of like, Oasis and the indie stuff as well. Loved just like, oh for fuck's sake, like how easy that was to play along to, and it was just like second nature.
I was going to say, is there a particular genre or era where the drums were more sort of challenging or maybe predominant in the mix kind of thing, and where it maybe wasn't?
I mean, like, always sort of listening to the Beatles, that was one thing I played along to. Because
Yeah.
it was very, like, prominent then, do you know what I mean? Like, Ringo really cut through. And, you know, even, like, Charlie Watts with Rolling Stones as well. And then even, like, you know, sort of more modern day guys. Like, I was of that age that kind of, like, loved, like, Busted and McFly and all those kind of things. So it was always, like, learning those that were nice, that it was like you could listen to it and go, oh yeah, like the drumming's like simple but effective, you know, which has always been my biggest philosophy.
Well, he used to get stick, didn't he, Ringo? Well, he still does. What was the reason he got stick for it being too basic?
I think everyone thinks like he just played really like simple. Do you know what I mean? But like sometimes less is more.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
100%. Leave that space, as they say.
I spoke to a drum teacher when I was at like a high school teacher, and one of them said that he had this fantastic drummer that he knew in the area, and he was like, what was it like to play with him? He asked someone what was it like to play with him, and he said we had to change him because he couldn't hold down a 4. And he's a brilliantly technical drummer, but he just couldn't keep a 4, and they just wanted that straight 4. And I think there's a reason why so many people talk about Ringo Starr. Like Dave Grohl loves him.
Yeah, exactly.
Taylor Hawkins loved him.
Exactly.
All these drummers absolutely love Ringo Starr, but then people absolutely slate him. I don't get it.
I still go back and watch all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, people doing the whole, I think there's one where it's like, it's all famous drummers like Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins and you guys heard of The Roots? Like their drummer,
Heard of him,
their drummer says about him, and even like loads of metal drummers as well, like reference him. It's like, you know, even like just keeping a solid beat in 4/4 time or in 3/4, whatever, it can be like the most essential thing in any sort of music. It's something I definitely worked on a lot through uni, because I knew I could keep in time, but whenever I played gigs or anything with like little bands that I was in at the time, just no one was dancing. No one was kind of like, oh, that's solid, like that's really tight.
It's interesting that you put that down to you almost. Is that sort of the general conception? I
think so for a lot of drummers, yeah. Like you can see all these like incredibly technical drummers, like, you know, all these guys that do like all the jazz stuff, jazz fusion, like metal stuff, funk stuff, whatever. And you're like, okay, that's cool to watch. They can stay in tempo, which is amazing. And they can stay in time, they can keep everyone together whilst doing all that crazy, building a shed and stuff. But it's, you know, this, I don't know, just for me, there's something about that whole, like, just keeping a 2 and 4. Do you know what I mean? That kind of like is the one thing that kind of everyone goes, oh yeah, that's what the drummer does.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So you talked about them early bands, so we've got to get into that. So first live gig, we have to talk a little bit about. Did it go to plan? I'm just going to turn this off so I don't keep buzzing.
Trying to think. I'm even trying to think back to the first live gig I did. It was lots of like, I did lots of jazz gigs, things like that. I think if it was like a sort of my own thing, I was in a band called Pacific State back in college, and it was always kind of like gigs in the college venue at Preston College.
Oh,
and, so it's funny because like the guitarist mate of mine, Jack, was he was absolutely incredible as a guitarist. The guy who was the bassist, Nico, he started as a guitarist actually, doing a lot of lead stuff, and he's got like, his dad's got a studio up in Darwin and stuff like that, so we'd always go and rehearse there and stuff. And the girl that was the singer, Charlotte Lilly, I think she was called, she did loads of solo stuff as well at one point. But
is it still there, that school in Darwin? Is it the music school?
No. It's quite funny because you come off the motorway, you do a left sort of down the main street, and then it's like a little left turn off, opposite like a
is it like an industrial estate? I'm sure
it's kind of up there that way, and then but you sort of turn off this main road and it's just in his garage,
right,
like out the back of his house. It's like La Corsia Studios or something like that.
It's a dream.
Yeah, it was class though. It was really nice, like to go in there and like not have to take anything. It was just always like I could just rock up with my sticks and be there, kind of thing. But yeah, our first gig was always like kind of the covers and things like that. I think we had a couple of originals that we started to write, if I remember rightly, and we went to plan as much as a college kid can sort of do, and but we're all lacking slots of like, you know, you've got like 20 minutes to fill, and it was kind of to do with an assignment as well, so we all kind of like did kind of like a small essay to support it or something, you know.
What do you call it, like dissertation sort of thing.
Sort of, yeah.
I missed all that stuff. I never did any of that. Like, you didn't study music, did you?
Yeah, I studied music.
Of course you did.
Yeah,
At uni,
yeah, mine was composition. So there was, I think, we had the choice to do performance, composition, or you could do a written one. I think 3 people did the written one because it was like 12,000 words for your dissertation. So am I fuck writing 12,000 words? Even as much as I love music, I'll talk the 12,000 words, mate.
Yeah. I was going to say, you can talk it on stage, can't you? Or something like that as well.
So you said you were doing a little bit of guitar as you were growing up as well. Did you write yourself in your early years? Did you write anything?
I've definitely tried. I'm really good at say this sort of like self-righteously in a way. But I've like done a lot of kind of writing little bits of lyrics here and there. Like, worked in a school the past 2 years, and you get a piece of scrap paper and a pencil, and you're writing something down under the desk whilst the teacher's going, "Can you just do this?" And once you're still writing it down.
Just random melodies.
Kind of. It's kind of just like lots of words, and I sort of can string a couple of sentences together or a couple of lines or something, and you go, "Oh, that works." And then my downfall was always putting the music to it. Like I've tried and tried and tried. Like I think I've written one song ever that kind of was like, oh yeah, that's okay. It was just like 2 verses and a chorus.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That was it.
The problem is, you do get to that point where you listen to something, you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. And you come back and listen to it, and you just criticize everything about it. Like I think sometimes it's just you got to show someone and let other people decide for you.
Exactly.
But it is hard because when you think, oh no, that's not my best work, you don't want to show it to anyone.
No, of course.
That's interesting though that you've actually found lyrics but not been able to put the music to it.
Yeah.
Even though you're more of an instrument. I mean, I'm talking for you there, but it
is kind of like that whole. I enjoy just like making music anyway, writing parts for stuff like all the time, and but it's nice to kind of like do it from having been a listener and a lover first of music, Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So you're in college. Did you ever do like any pub gigs, during that time with your bands and that kind of thing, or was it more just gigging in the college?
I think it was a few gigs at the Ferret. One of our like things that one of our tasks we had to do at one point. I think it was like second year of college. I did 3 years at Preston, so it was. But the second year it was like, oh, you got to go and like put your own gig on.
Oh,
like ask a venue and whether you have to pay for it or whatever, and all this lot, but you have to factor in you've got to pay it yourself if you're paying for it, kind of thing. So of all places, it was like the singer Charlotte goes like, oh, why don't we do 53 Degrees? It was like the big room downstairs, like that's gonna be loads of money, and I don't know if the PA system's still in it. No, we'll just do the little room upstairs. So we went upstairs and did that, and we had like a couple of support bands, one from like St Helens. I'm still mates with the drummer from that band as well, which is funny. And then another band from somewhere in Manchester. And it was dead funny that night because we played our set, and it was like packed down. We were still in the venue at like midnight kind of thing. And then it's only down the road from it's across the road from Ferret and down the road from Ships and Giggles. And our guitarist Jack goes like, oh, I really want to do that again. So we're like, wonder if there's an open mic on anywhere. So like Googling it on phones and, oh, Ships and Giggles has one tonight kind of thing. So then, walked in there and met a mate of mine, a long-standing friend of mine, Ash Fitzsimmons, I think he's called, Fitzy. So it was dead funny because he's just like Jack Black, on stage. He just like comes out and he just like he's all about making everyone laugh all the time and just making it a good night, So we went on and I ended up sort of singing. My mate Jack gets up and plays kind of thing. My bass player Nico was just kind of happy to be at the bar kind of thing. He was just like necking a pint. But yeah, no, it's like just I can remember those like early gigs and I do cherish them a bit. Like it does sort of make you think like, wow, like been doing this a while.
Were you nervous for it?
I think I was, yeah. Being that sort of it was like my first proper kind of off my back, off my own back kind of gig. Definitely. But it like otherwise, it's just like. Yeah, just the nerves for any gig as well. That's the other thing. Like I get nervous for everything. So even today.
You said you were nervous. Yeah. I'm like that though. I think if you're not like, you have to be. I mean, it goes a bit silly sometimes, doesn't it? But you do have to have an element of like, maybe not for a podcast, but like a gig. Yeah.
I think I was actually nervous for our first podcast bit. Yeah. Anytime I do something for the first time, I get like real anxiety. Like, for God's sake, just 100%. Don't forget what you're saying. Like.
Yeah,
just keep it keep it smooth. But gigs now, it's just like, right, I'm ready for it now.
Yeah.
It's more that mental game of like trying to win over the crowd and make sure someone sings along.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think
I hadn't gigged for 2 weeks, which doesn't seem a long time, but for some reason, because I hadn't gigged for 2 weeks yesterday, and I did one yesterday, I was like really nervous about it. But I'll ask you this question: what is it that you actually get nervous about? Because I can't pinpoint exactly what it is.
I think everyone gets nervous for like, you know, you're always not wanting to make mistakes. That's the one thing for me. I think even like you say with the crowd as well, like I definitely empathise with that. That it's like you want to get the crowd on board, you want to have them like on your side straight away and have them either dancing, singing, clapping hands, whatever. I think even just for it all to go well. That like, you know, Pilots, we played at Conti a little while back and Matt dropped his guitar on stage and it was a bit like, whoa, like, how does that happen? And it's just his strap locker broken or something. Like, it just didn't work or something.
End up catching your guitar.
Yeah, you're like, no, but his was like fully onto the floor and onto the stage.
Every guitarist makes the same noise, like,
yeah.
It's like you lose all gravity. Like,
exactly. I mean, like, you know, I don't sort of get nervous for like, you know, oh, what if I break a stick or anything? I've got a stick bag full of them next to me. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it is that like, I think it's healthy to have a bit of nerves, though, you know.
Well, I went to watch a gig at a theatre the other day because I've had a couple of weeks off, and it's funny because when you actually sit in the audience and watch someone, like, you know, that moment, you might not have it as a drummer, but say you're the front man and you kind of, you take a little second to have a drink or something, it feels like forever. And you could tell this guy was really feeling that. He had a sip of water and he's like, oh, I'm not very good at talking in between songs. But it didn't seem a problem for me as the audience member, but it feels like a massive problem for you. It's weird how when you see it on the other side.
I think that, weirdly, I can talk for England. You probably watched the podcast.
Couple of times.
Yeah, it's just, for whatever reason, when you get up on stage, it's not like having a conversation all of a sudden. So it feels like you're giving a speech to the United Nations.
It is really strange, isn't it, when you do that? Because I try and do it on drums sometimes every now and again, and like my mic isn't always on the best, like because I'm in the back and it's like contending with drum noise or that lot. But yeah, I try and talk to the crowd, and sometimes you go, "How you doing?" And then there's just no one responds. Yeah.
Then you go really small.
You're a bit like, oh, this is the next song. Let's go. Just get out of there.
I've just had to like find a way to take the piss out of it.
Yeah.
Like you just okay, no one's responded, so I go, oh, come on, guys, it's Friday night, cheer yourselves up, for fuck's sake, or whatever. And then like generally, I think that does get the crowd on side or saying thanks for coming or something like that.
Yeah.
But like what I've had to do is actually, because I know that many songs, and I'm also a bit lazy to change my set list. I'll play a few, I'll tell them it's to show off, and then go, right, I'll take some requests. The rule is if I can play it, I'll do it. And I've had to play some shit because of that. Like the other week, I had to play Colourblind by Darius.
Oh, wow.
In Kirby Lonsdale. I thought, how the fuck have you heard from this song?
How's that happened?
I want to hear that, to be fair.
It's
That'd be
a fucking great song.
Quite
I love
high,
it.
that one, isn't it?
It's deceptively low.
Right, okay,
deceptively low.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's funny though, when it works for sport and everything, the more relaxed you are, the better the performance goes. But
Definitely.
it's like sometimes, even though you think that way, you can't stop it, can you?
No.
Yeah. So moving into, did you go to uni and study music?
I was at I was at BIM in Manchester. It's kind of half how I met like Connor, who you guys have had on, and because we used to be on the same bus and stuff. And
nice.
We didn't know each other at the time. Like I knew who he was, but I don't know if he knew me or whatever. But I know he referenced me in the last one.
You make it sound like, oh my god, that's fucking Connor.
It was one of those. You stood on the bus and like you see him in his gym gear, and it's like, oh, he must be going to the gym down in Penn with him, or whether he's seen his missus or whatever. I couldn't remember, but. And he was always like, sometimes you try and do one of them, like, all right, and I do it, and he just looks straight through me, like, I don't know who you are yet, But yeah, no, it was lovely being at BIM and had some really great tutors there. A guy called Brian Hargreaves, he used to play drums in the house band on Terry Wogan's radio show on BBC BBC Radio 2, sorry, and then had a tutor as well, Rick Jupp, he's the previous drummer of Elbow. So it's quite funny because I met him when I was in college. He came and did like a masterclass one afternoon, and it was like right before we were finishing and stuff, and I was like, I've got to chat to him. I've got to try and like get as much knowledge out of this guy as I can do, and I had like a good chat to him and stuff in between like the 2 sessions he did at college, and played drum techs all afternoon. That was cool. And I remember like us all like all the drummers that were there that were like up for like properly playing and stuff, like, all played really well, granted, for like all the exercises he did. We had like a metronome going, and he's like, we're going to all play at 70 BPM.
Right.
And it's like, you're thinking like, like, how do I play along to this, And it was dead funny because, like, having done that, I then went and practiced that loads at home. A few years later at uni, he's my uni tutor, and so there's one lesson, like, particularly sort of in the first few weeks of like my second or third year there, and they're like, we're bringing Rick in, like, he's going to teach you guys. And it was like one of the first few lectures I had with him. We're in like this room full of like electric drum kits that weren't turned on. It was just so that we had something to sort of like play on. And he's on a kit at the front kind of thing, like proper acoustic kit. And he goes like, we're going to do this thing where we play along to a metronome. And I want you to just play like the same thing like over and over and over. And we're going to do it for about 10 minutes. And like the lecture's about 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm thinking, I wonder where this is going now. And he goes, right, I'm going to set the click at 70 BPM. And I go, I know exactly what he's doing now. I was like, I've done this so many times. And like, I'm so ready for this. And the best part was we like got to record it as well, like into like Logic or Pro Tools or something. And he messed about with it and played it back to us and all that kind of thing. But there was some drummers in the room that like found that really easy.
Yeah.
And others found it really, really like tough. It was dead fun to do, and then like the end of the lecture came, and sort of I'm sitting there and like gathering my things together. Everyone else is just like two more people in there, and kind of, hey Rick, do you remember coming to Preston College? And he was like, I knew I recognised you across the room. Like point C was like, I knew it. Like I've seen you around, and I was like, I'm sure I've met him before. And like, but yeah, it was funny then because like I still message him today and stuff. Yeah. But those kind of times at uni and we had like lectures where we'd sort of like learn a song like at the start of the week and have a lesson at the end of the week where you would come together with like so I was on the drum course, there was a vocals course, guitarist course, and a bassist course and stuff. If you played other instruments and you wanted to do that as well in those sort of sessions, you could do. I remember like we played a heavy metal song, and one of the drummers was in a metal band outside of school, but he did like a lot of the screaming stuff, but whilst he was on drums for that band. And so then it was my turn, I was drumming. I can't play metal very well at all, and next thing he jumps up and is like on the mic and he's like screaming down his mic. It was so cool, to be fair, but like really, really good. But I can remember all those sort of things, like those lectures and stuff of like it helps you just like learn to sort of, how does a song go together? Like, you learn each section of the song. One of your drum teachers like breaks it down in like in one of your lessons midweek and stuff, like every single detail. And then it's like, it's funny to then play at the end of the week.
Yeah. You said something earlier about playing the churches, about playing quiet. Did you find like, I found when my guitar teacher started to show me jazz standards, like about playing parts, playing chords in different positions, I felt like it really helped and benefited my songwriting because you don't realise how many layers there are to like one chord in a recording. Yeah. Did you find doing stuff like that helped you come up with parts for the pilots and all that? Do you use some of that stuff
I think
today?
so. Yeah, I mean, the guitarist guys are better at that, but like, there's times I've sat and sort of like played the chords around at home, and you kind of think like, oh, that's a nice way of playing that chord, and like different inversions and stuff. I remember doing that for my degree and all the theory stuff and that kind of thing. Like I read music and stuff, so it was a lot of like just getting to grips with like not just the drum stuff. It was like every other instrument out there. But yeah, that's definitely helped with like pilot stuff and other stuff that I've like playing jazz band and stuff. Our keys player was always play one chord, and one of the tutors would go like, oh, can you make that like a can you flatten it and put like a seventh on it, like, and he does it, and it's like, yeah, that's the chord that you need now. So he'd be like etching it on his sheet music and stuff, So yeah.
What was the best advice you got from some of those? You said like the drummer for Elbow, and obviously vast amount of experience in the industry. What was the best advice you took from them tutors?
There's endless pieces of like advice that there was always that like less is more, simple but effective, that kind of thing. Playing parts that sort of that complement the you know, what the bass is doing, what the guitars are doing, what the vocals, you know, like not swarming the vocals as well, that kind of thing. You know, I've always kind of lived by that like, you know, if you're coming up to a guitar solo, you don't want to like drown the guitarist out, that kind of thing, you know. It definitely like loads of stuff like that. And even like, as far as I remember, I was having a lecture of like, what are your fills like? And we'd all have a go at playing a fill on it, you know, right, try, you know, making like the first part of it quieter and then build the dynamics as you get to the end of it. Or, you know, does your fill go up or does it go down? You know, it sounds really daft, but you just think like, don't know. You sitting there play, it becomes that like, you know, Whiplash, the drum film. It's like that whole thing.
Oh, that's the film I was thinking about before.
Yeah.
Is that jazz film?
That's the one.
Like, yeah, he's really strict in that.
Used to be like that when I was in the jazz band. Like, not throwing chairs across the room and stuff like that, but it was always like, read your sheet music.
I've not seen it yet.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah, it's on my list.
Yeah.
I've watched probably every documentary out there on musicians on Netflix, but I've not got round to watching that one for some reason. Like, do you find it's always the most simple piece of advice is always the best from those people? I
think so. Yeah. It's always like the one thing that sticks out for me a lot of the time. Like if someone says like, you know, oh, like when you play that thing that you do in that piece of music, you know, like in the jazz band or whatever, and so I'd play the particular like pattern or whatever, and right now lean back whilst you're playing it, and I'm like, if I lean back, I'm gonna fall off this drum stool. And they're like, no, not literally lean, like musically lean back, like sit back on it. You're pushing it. Do you know what I mean? And it's that whole like in the film, it's like, are you rushing or are you dragging?
Yeah.
That whole thing is like you learn about sort of the timing of stuff better that way. I think that's definitely helped, but it's just always those little bits of advice that like they don't sound like advice either. Yeah, you know.
I know exactly what you mean because I was watching Rick Beato's channel on YouTube the other day.
He's class.
It's ridiculous. His ear is ridiculous.
I've seen him do. I think it was Josh Freese that's Foo Fighters drummer now.
I've not watched that one yet, but Josh Freese, I've been following him for years. He was Crooked Vultures, wasn't he?
Yeah, Vultures, no. 9 Inch Nails was one of them. Offspring.
What was the other one the Tool lead singer was in? Perfect Circle.
That's it.
Perfect Circle, he was unbelievable in that. And Feeder, I think he did as well.
Yeah.
At one point. Mm-hmm. But I watched the one with Sting.
Yeah.
And Sting was saying when he was coming up with the more difficult bass parts for the Police, he's like, did you have to sort of learn how to sing and play like more technical stuff? And he was like, yeah. He said, well, how did you go about it? He said, well, slowed it down because anyone can play anything slow. Yeah. I just thought, like, obviously that is the thing you do. You don't think about it that way.
Goes back to that 70 BPM thing that I was thinking about, you know. There's a drummer I follow on. He's massive out there in the drum world. He's a guy called Dave Elitch, but he's played with a band called the Mars Volta that do like just insane. But he's gone from like being in this like mega fast, ultra heavy, like hard hitting band to then like now he's into more sort of like he's basically like being people's sort of like, I don't know what you would call it, like a physio kind of thing in a way, and like a sort of a guru in like a way that he's like, you know, when you sit at the drums, like, do you slouch? Do you sit back? Are your shoulders back? Do you relax? Do you do that? And he's really big on like, even though, you know, there's a video of him playing a track called Goliath by Miles Volta, and his arms are like way up in the air whilst he's playing, but he was relaxed the whole time. Yeah. Like, you don't want to be like, like really working to sort of like play heavy or to hold the stick right or whatever. It's just like, you know, as you would with guitar, you wouldn't stand there and like, I'm going to move my arm up and down. It's all loose, isn't it? Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Same with vocalists as well. If you have your, I'm guilty of it sometimes. You know, you put your neck forward a bit, not Liam Gallagher, but you know, sometimes you've not set the mic stand up or whatever, and that changes the tone of your vocal.
Slower, isn't it?
Yeah,
like I turn like that to play drums a lot, you know, and sing and stuff like that. Yeah, I noticed that as well. Yeah, I can empathise with that.
You don't mean to do it. Sometimes, like, even when you're going for a high note, you push and you don't actually need to.
No.
Yeah.
It's just that fear of not getting it, sometimes in a live environment as well.
Yeah, and I think if your voice, like, when you're doing, like, 2 45-minute sets, you get tired as well. So, like, you're starting to run out of breath, and you're like, right, just need to force this last bit of breath.
Well, as you sing that bit,
it's mad. Just not singing for 2 weeks and gigging yesterday. I've struggled towards the end of it. I don't usually struggle towards the end of a set, but yesterday I was like, oh, it's amazing, isn't it? I've just that.
Yeah.
I suppose it's like any muscle, though, isn't it? Really.
I know it normally takes me, like when I've done that, it takes me about 5 or 6 songs to get back into the gig. But once you're in it, you're like, right, back in the zone again now. It's like you've never left after the first 3 songs or something. It's weird.
What do you find hardest with drumming then? So the 70 BPM, I imagine you can get quite stiff there, can't you? Or is it the really fast, heavy, sort of loads of fills? And...
I don't know. It just sort of like depends on what I'm doing, really, a lot of the time. I enjoy being like, I think versatility is massive. That's probably a hard thing to do, like I would say for any drummer, really. Like, you know, going from doing pilot stuff that's like really 60s to then like, oh, I'm going to play Connor stuff that's like country sort of vibes, you know, and then to go and do like Will Edgar's stuff that is really sort of like poppy, and then back towards another mate of mine, Taylor, who is like all sort of jazzy stuff, but like does covers gigs and things like that. But he sort of does that whole like, I'm going to make this a creative cover. So he does like Misery Business by Paramore as like a jazzy shuffly thing. Right. It's quite cool, but
that keeps you on your toes as a drummer, doesn't it? And that's obviously that's what you learned from music, to try all these different styles and get yourself.
Does your mindset have to change when you're going into those gigs? Like
a little bit, yeah. I'm usually sort of like, it sounds really like corny this, but like leading up to those gigs, I'm listening to that kind of music. Do you know what I mean? Leading up to it, because I've got to think that way. I've got to play that way. I can't rip out like, you know, oh, I'm going to put a Ringo fill in the middle of this, you know, like in the middle of a jazzy shuffle thing. It doesn't work, you know. So I guess like, again, like, you know, advice and stuff has always been like, you know, like play for your situation as well, you know. Like, you know, we're working on some stuff, aren't we? So it's like looking at your stuff, I'm thinking like, you know, I'm a big fan of like Zach Starkey when he was playing in Oasis, Ringo Starr's drummer, and he's like plays with the Who now. But like, you know, I'd think of those guys, you know, all the Oasis drummers and the sort of indie guys out there for your stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd listen to that a lot. And then, you know, for pilot stuff, it's like we're coming up to record something like we were doing yesterday. You listen to the demo, but you also think like, oh, like, it's still got to be me in this. And, you know, that sometimes can be the hardest thing as well. That's like another, you know, going back to that challenge question as well, you know, like that's definitely hard, trying to like still be you sometimes when you're trying to play for a certain situation, and, you know, you're trying to think like, I've got to play that way, and almost sort of program yourself to do that, but also then think, well, I've still got to be human about this.
Yeah. Do you know what I thought yesterday when I saw the pilots at the Grand? I thought, John's not there. Are they doing like the, you know, the what do you call it, like the drum stems? I was like, you better have him play. Are you playing live on record?
Yeah, I'm playing live on it. Yeah.
Because I've seen on like Rick Beato and stuff, the amount of mics you have to have on the drums in the studio. Do they put a lot of mics on at the Grand and stuff?
I mean, Tom had to get sort of like the right sounds and stuff, and again, that's down to like, you know, what the song calls for as well, isn't it? You know, like it's definitely sort of like you've got. I'm trying to think now. So
normally the standard one is 2 overheads, close mic each individual drum and the hi hat.
Yeah,
and then the kick drum as
didn't
well.
have a hats mic yesterday, but because the ceiling's quite low in that room, it's not like a super, you know, you're not thinking sort of like the Abbey Road massive high ceiling room. So we were able to kind of like get it with 2 overheads. He likes to sort of get like as close a kick sound as he can, like, but he uses 2 mics to kind of like sort of, you know, do that whole
one inside, one outside sort of thing, or.
I think they both were kind of like just inside the head. I've got a big hole on the front of my bass drum to do that, or for that kit I used yesterday anyway. And but yeah, they were on mic stands, but they were sort of like just inside the bass drum kind of thing. You know, you've got snare top, snare bottom mic, tom mics, all that kind of stuff.
It's amazing how, especially in the bass drum, you move it a quarter of an inch and it completely changes the sound. Because my granddad's a drummer and he comes out with me sometimes on an acoustic kit.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Like sometimes we just set up ever so slightly differently and I'm like, the drum don't sound right. And I'm not a master on drums, EQ and all that. Like, just move it. We're moving it around constantly trying to get the sweet spot.
Yeah. No, that was a big thing we did at uni as well, like mic placement, things like that.
I think even a guitar amp, sometimes you get into a massive
hand job
room like the bass has to go right down because it just massively
Carries,
travels.
yeah.
Like we've had a bass guitar and like probably just like 9 o'clock, like because the bass, on the bass exactly a bass frequency on the bass guitar because it was just like we turned it on, it just started feeding back straight away. Mad.
Yeah. No, we had that yesterday with one of the guitar tracks. It was kind of like just playing like a single note, like on, which I think was the. It was to do with the chords anyway. It was just like kind of a root note thing, and we did a take of sort of like, I think it was near enough the whole song, and straight away like Matt was a bit sort of like, he goes like, oh, can we turn the treble up on that? It's like too bassy. It's sounding like a bass guitar already, and so turn the treble right up, and you get that sort of like that more sort of the new track's going to be kind of more like surfer style, like Beach Boys kind of style. Yeah. So we were trying to get closer to that sound. Like we had tea towels on drums and stuff like that as well. Nice. So that was fun, doing that sort of thing. Just the sonics in it, but
definitely.
Yeah.
I reckon in a minute we have a break just so we can touch base and make sure we cover everything that you want to cover as well. Might be a bit of a non-question this because you might have covered it, but when you see another drummer live, what are you looking for in their performance to say, yeah, they're a good drummer, very good drummer, or not so good drummer?
For a while, I was very like critical of other drummers, of like, they're not as good as me or whatever,
Easy to do, innit?
But equally, I then sort of thought, well, actually, you see all these like drum educators online. What one name just to throw out there is a guy called Mike Johnston, and he's like always been a really big sort of like online drum lesson guy, and he always gets that question at these like drum clinic masterclass things, and people like ask him like why am I not as good as that person? And it's like, well, you're not as good as that person because either the nasty way to say it is like, oh, you don't practice enough, do this, don't do that. But equally, I kind of got to a point where I would sit at a gig, and it's really easy to do as a drummer that you go like, you listen to the other drummers in soundcheck and you go, well, even though I'm in the band that's supporting, like the first support act, like I know I'm the better drummer here out of everyone. But it's not necessarily that I'm arrogant and cocky and up myself. I try and always stay like really humble if I can. And equally still I'm like, mate, like sounded class in soundcheck, like I can't wait to hear you later, and I've tried to just get past that whole like, now I'm more sort of everyone's good at what everyone does, don't try and be someone else, be the first you, do you know what I mean?
Is that a drummer thing or just a musician thing? Because my granddad used to be like that. Sometimes my dad would take him to watch a cover band and he'd be like, nah, I don't like the drummer, let's go. And he'd be like, is that just a drummer thing? Or
I don't know if it's a drummer thing. I think there's a general musician thing definitely about it, but I'm trying to just get past that whole like being, one person being better than the other. It's like we're all good at what we do, so why does it matter whether you're better or worse than someone?
It's not a competitive industry. I think I've gone to I think I heard Johnny Marr's thing, like everything we do is all about the song.
Yeah.
And if they're doing the right thing that complements the music they're playing,
exactly,
they're good.
Exactly.
Like it's as simple as that. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not a competitive industry. I know we have things like Battle of the Bands, but really no one's going there to compete. You might go there to win and give your best performance, but you're not going there to go, oh, he's shit, he's good. You're not really thinking that. Sometimes there are people that you can tell they're not well rehearsed, they're pissed or whatever. But it's not a competitive industry.
No.
There is a like collective, really.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you've all had those moments where you go and watch a gig and someone's absolutely insane on the guitar and you're like, fuck me. Like, but at the end of the day, like, for example, like some of my influences, like Rich Ashcroft, all he plays is rhythm and sings, and it's like, right, we'll just step back a minute. You don't have to be this.
No,
like
exactly.
I watched your guitarist. I thought, like, I'd been listening to a lot of John Mayer and a lot of blues stuff. I was like, shit, this guy could be in a country band, a blues band, a classic rock band.
Adam's really good at what he does, and he's really good at like just finding the right parts for anything, really.
Yeah. All I noticed was it was all so simple as well. Like there was nothing like majorly technical about it, but he got every part complemented.
Yeah,
everything.
exactly. I know he's done like loads of work like towards the new single that's going to come out soon. Like, he was the one who kind of put the demo together, and like, he sings some lead stuff on it as well. And there's not really like a solo in it, but like all the stuff that he did that's like the lead parts, if you will, they really, really do work for the song really well. And but yeah, like, when you say about whether it's like being I kind of don't want to make it like just as a good drummer, like a good musician generally, as long as you're like, as long as you've got an ear to kind of like hear what's right for the situation, and you can play well in that situation and, you know, complement what's going on and be a part of it, rather than, you know, hey, check me out. It's a bit nicer when you sort of, you know, don't get me wrong, those musicians are like, you do go, wow, they're phenomenal, you know, but equally, if you can watch that person and go, like, they're good at what they do, but they're also really good at like playing with other people. I've met musicians before where, you know that they're really good in their own bedroom at home, but then when they play live, it's a bit like, it's a different story, you know. And then, you know, when you do message and like, hey, you know, can I ask a massive thing here, like, you know, do you find it easier playing at home or in a venue? And they're like, do you find it easier playing at home? Right, well then try and play more venues. Do you know what I mean? To hone that skill, and whether they take that well or not, that's on them, you know.
It's little things though, isn't it? Like if you're just a bedroom guitarist, but then all of a sudden you've got to stand up, propped it up against a mic stand. It's all those little live things that you just need to get used to, innit? Like, you know, I remember the first time I ever tried to play guitar and sing, and I was like, I'd never stood up and done it. So I was like, shit,
you'd always like sat down,
like,
and
the guitar feels all the way over here, and you're like, it's just them little live things that you'd never think of. But as soon as you get out there doing it, I guess.
I think that is the thing. Like, I think I kind of learnt to play with other musicians by getting really good at playing to a track. And like, you can do that all day in your bedroom, but as soon as that drummer goes a bit slower or something like that, you've then got to learn to adjust to that, because you've learned it exactly how the track is. And a lot of people, you'd be surprised, don't do that. I think I've always found the best drummers or the best bassists or best guitarists, the ones that could find that lovely technical spot that just fits with the song. It's such a hard skill to do. I had a drummer and I wrote this simple like 6/8 sort of pattern. And he just added a couple of little offbeat kick patterns. I thought,
you'd be like, ooh,
yeah, just you do it.
I
stopped writing for him. Like, I just started going, put something to this, and he'd just come up with something 10 times better. So absolutely no point.
I've done the same kind of thing. Well, not like writing wise, but it's like, if we're like playing at church and stuff, I've then been like asked to like sing or play guitar sometimes, and sort of like be on the front of the platform. And my mate Jeremy's like in the drum booth and stuff. And for ages it was like, you know, like, oh no, this is the drum beat, you know, like, but I just got to the point where I was like, I don't want to be that person anymore. I can't tell him what to, like, he's his own drummer, do you know what I mean? Like, if I was ever in a band with him and, you know, we've chatted about the possibility of it, I'd be like, you just do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know he's going to play well. I know he's, like, well adjusted. I know he's, like, got the ability to do it. So why do I need to tell him what to do? Do you know what
Trust
I mean?
is such a big thing in a band as well.
Same with, like, other musicians. You don't, you know, I wouldn't tell Adam how to play guitar or, you know, anyone else how to play what they play, you know? Or how to sing stuff. It's like, you know, just do it.
Exactly,
yeah. Quick break.
Yeah, good spot to break.
Nearly an hour already. So
nearly an hour.
That's the thing. We usually have breaks on the camera runs out after 30 minutes. But now with this, you lose track of it, don't you? In a good way, but you know, Yeah, we'll have a quick break and we'll make sure that we're covering what we want to cover in the next part. So see you in a minute. Right, welcome back to the episode with Jon Raynor.
We'll leave that in.
Just leave it in. Before we move on, John, biggest misconception of drummers? It might be audience members at gigs, it might be band members thinking of you. What's the biggest misconception you think?
I can think of a few, to be honest, but I think that the main one that always sticks out to me is that we just any Tom, Dick and Harry can sit behind the drums and be at the back of a band, you know. All they do is make a load of noise. So,
are you really cavemen?
literally, yeah. No, it's very caveman-esque what we do, but there's a lot of thought, and you know, it's very physical as well doing what we do as drummers. So
it sounds like a stupid question, but do your arms ache? Like, is it? Or you get used to it?
It depends, actually. I mean, in studio yesterday, like every drum take I did, I was like out of breath afterwards. I was giving it everything, you know. And I guess it depends on, you know, how you play. It goes back to like the previous bit I was saying about that guy is just like, you know, how do you sit and how do you hold yourself and all that kind of thing. Is it all loose? Is it like you really holding the sticks or what? I think it's all down to that really, but I try and always keep like as loose as possible. I'm always stretching out before gigs and stuff like that. One
of the things I see, like, you see a lot of drummers, like, obviously they move their arms a little bit to for a certain amount of support. But it's actually all in your fingers. It's
fingers and wrists a lot of the time. Yeah, it's you got different techniques of how you can hold the sticks and stuff like that as well. So it does start out like, you learn to just do this kind of thing, and then the more and more you play, you start to learn to turn your hands over, and it's all kind of in your wrists, and then if you do turn that way, then it becomes more of like a fingers thing. Call it, there's all these different techniques like German grip and American grip and French grip, traditional, where you've got it like marching drummer style. I used to do that playing in jazz bands and stuff, and I've just lost it. I can't do it anymore at all.
It is always weird, like watching like the different drummers, like that Oasis drummer Alan White, used to play trad, and you think like
his brother Steve White does as well. He's still going out there. He's played for like Paul Weller and people like that. It's funny technique to do, definitely.
Especially in an indie band that were quite aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's down to like what you've learned to do. I mean, it's a local band at the moment, The Cases, and their drummer Matt, he does that traditional stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But he's got like a good feel, and he can really like dig in doing that, or he can play like kind of more just like your traditional grip.
Friends of the pod, shout out to The Cases, by the way.
They are due on, to be fair, aren't they? When we get
should have them on.
Yeah. They seem like doing quite well at the minute, don't they?
They're doing pretty good. Doing really, really well.
Where was it? They played Highest Point recently as well.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. I was so jealous. I was chatting to Matt because I'm a big Busted fan, and they were like headlining that day. I was like, "Can you get me in? And like the day after, he was like, "I'm really sorry, I never got round to you about it. We couldn't get you in. I'm so sorry." I was like, "Don't worry, man."
So when you say about people thinking they can play the drums, have you ever had it at gigs? Because my granddad's had it, where you're in the break and someone tries to get on your kit and have a go from the audience.
Yeah, once or twice. Yeah. I did like an Oktoberfest gig with some mates of mine who have like called Atomic Brass, based in like Lancaster, and they do all this like, it's a tuba player, a trombone player, and a couple of sax players and a drummer. My mate Cam from uni was their drummer still is their drummer, and for a little while he was like wanting to sort of, or I don't know if this is the case. I don't want to get him in trouble now. I'm looking down the camera, breaking the fourth wall. But he at heart is a metal drummer. But he has a really good feel for like jazzy, funky, dancey stuff. Yeah. So they do all that kind of like, they do loads of covers of things, and like I've played with them recently where they did like 5 Colours in the Hair by McFly, but it's like all brass and drums. It was pretty cool, to be fair. But yeah, I had this one lady who particularly was quite drunk that night, and she kept trying to get on my drums and all this and in the end it just like, I didn't leave my drum kit the whole gig. I just had to sit there, and they had to bring me a pint every now and again.
I've had people try and pick my guitar up and play Liam Gallagher, and actually there was a gig probably a couple of months ago where this guy was like, "Oh, I'm a drummer, can I just have a little go on this?" Because I told you about that loop kit, and we thought he broke the kick on it.
No.
Thankfully, just a little screw went loose when he was hitting it really hard. But just thought, can you imagine that? Like, we've said it before. Well, go on, tell the story for yesterday.
Go on.
Do you know what?
I'm
like,
intrigued.
This is probably something a little bit for later as well. But when you get a football crowd, like for whatever reason, they put me in this corner, and then there's a telly there as well. Mm-hmm. So then you got people like watching the game by the gear.
They're all like looking just above you
at the screen. But like, I wasn't playing during the game. I was playing like an hour before it, and then like an hour after. But there's people watching the game by your gear. So luckily, Paul Leyland Gates is pretty good at just ushering people back a little bit, leaving a little walkway, and he does generally look after it. But girl just comes over and just puts a pint on one of my cases. I'm like,
can you?
Can you just? Is that your pint? She's like, yeah. I was like, can you just take that off there? It's like there's thousands of pounds worth of gear. I just can't have it getting wet. I told these lads the same next to them, and they all picked it up. But this woman goes, "Oh, but come on, it's just a case." I was like, "Yeah, fine. But if that spills, there's an extension lead there.
Run to,
and that speaker costs you those speakers cost you £900 a pair. So I'll send you the bill in advance if you want." She soon moved it.
Yeah, I bet she did.
She complained about it, didn't she?
Yeah, she was going, it's just a case. Off, is it just a case? It's not just the case, it's everything else.
Everything nearby, isn't it? Yeah, it's in that area.
Madness.
I don't get how people just think, like I don't know if you get it at covers gigs, but like we've had loads of people put the drinks on the sub. I'm like, no, get that fuck off there. It's not a table. There's a table there.
I mean, we've done it. Admittedly, when we've been renting gear, we've like done a wedding. Probably I want to say like close to a month ago now. Up in Longridge somewhere. I think it was Ferraris or something. And we like rented a PA and. We admittedly maybe shouldn't tell this on camera, but either way, still doing it. My mate James was like, oh yeah, you rent this PA for £100, and if you need some lights or whatever, and we ditched the lights and all this lot, but we admittedly did it ourselves. It was like on the sub, but it was like when we weren't playing, and it was an area that was kind of like sectioned off and all that kind of thing, so we were like well careful with it, obviously, but yeah, so sometimes you do get that little like bugbear, don't you? Of like people doing stuff like that, messing with things, and it's annoying.
I don't get how people just think, oh, that's okay. Yeah, I'll just stick it there.
Yeah,
and then they've got a problem with it when you tell them to move it. It's like, fuck off. If you want to pay for the gear, you can. I'll give you the bill now, no problem.
Yeah, definitely.
So as we know, John, you're in a lot of bands, and I don't know if that's been the case for a long time, whether you've slowly got into bands, but what was that first band like where I guess you'd say it was semi-serious, maybe writing your own stuff, going out doing... Do you remember that very first band? I know you said about the college band, but maybe after college and uni sort of thing.
I think the college band was nice to kind of like have a first shot at it.
Apprenticeship.
Definitely. Yeah. We had like a good first go at it. Like I remember sitting in the studio one day there, and it was all sort of like, oh yeah, like let's see how many songs we can write like in the next hour of sitting in the studio before lunchtime. And we must have written about 7 songs basically that like, the guitarist came up with a riff, or I had like a beat that sort of was like playing round. Or the bass player would go like, oh, I've got this idea of, and it sort of ended up working out that it was like, I think it was like 6 or 7 songs or something that were like kind of maybe not complete, but they were at least started and had like a good sort of first like few strong sections and stuff. And then they kind of just stayed that way since. But I think if it was like the first thing that was kind of like a more solid band, I've done loads of stuff where like I remember my old college tutor Dan Clark, he's called. He still does loads of stuff today. Looks like Liam Gallagher. You'd like him, honestly. But no, he does like loads of different covers, and he's like based in like Freckleton and Kirkham and all that way kind of thing. And he's kind of the reason I ended up in a covers band for a little while. And but yeah, he used to write loads of stuff, and then there'd be days where I'd walk into college and like, right, everyone else is up in the IT room. Jono, you're in the drum studio today, writing parts for me. And I was like, oh, right, okay, cool. And he's like, I want something that's like, it was very like kind of between like indie and then like rockabilly stuff. Right, it was quite cool. Right, quite cool to be
Jake
fair.
Boogie.
Yeah, that kind of vibe. That kind of vibe. There was a couple of things. We did some funny, like we did a YouTube video thing where it was like, did a big. It's when Chris Cornell passed away some years ago, and we did that like Nothing Compares thing. So we were like on a green screen, like little like we were all miming in a video. But I'd say that was probably like the first thing that kind of like got into sort of writing my own parts for. Played with Millie Weaver at one point on her first EP that she released. I should say Millicent Weaver, technically. Okay. So she had this, I think it was the Senses EP it was called. And the first track I did is actually the last track on the EP, Acid Eyes it's called. And it's kind of like a sort of shuffly swung thing. And it was a really good EP to play on. Like I remember sort of like, one time we did that track kind of all together, got the drums pretty solid, did that track and that was fine kind of drums wise. We got it nailed in a day. And then I think some weeks later she goes like, oh, I'll pay you X amount of money to come and like do the other 4 songs in it. And I was like, right, okay, have you got like demos of the other 4? So she sends me the 4 demos, and they've kind of got like a guide track and kind of like what she wants to hear. And she's like do what you wish with it, that kind of thing, like make it your own a little bit as well if you want. I've got no issues with that at all. So I was like, right, okay. So then it's like in the practice room, drilling my parts a bit, that kind of thing, and thinking like, keep it simple, but also so that it's nice and it works for the song, and so that it's like, you know, and I'm really proud with like a lot of the stuff that I did on that, and it was probably like the first thing that I was like, oh right, this is what it's about now. And you know, even now I go back and listen to it, and there's like certain songs that I can go back to being in a moment stood in that studio going, yeah, I've got this, you know, like.
It's obviously when someone's saying to you, take that away and make it your own almost. You hear of drummers having their own signature sort of style. What would you say your signature style is, or something that defines you as a drummer?
I don't know really. I mean, I can recall sort of doing lots of this whole, you know, like people pulling me into a band and like, oh, you're the best drummer I know. You're like really solid, and like, you know, I know where I stand when I'm playing with you and all this like, you know, you don't go out of time. You don't this. You don't that. But I think. For me, it may just be just like I don't really know what it is that I do a lot of the time. I try and just, you know, play well and play for the song as much as I can. And, you know, again, like, you know, using Millie's example, it was very like, you know, she goes like, oh, like I want it to still be close to this, but I want it to sound like you, you know. And so then working with is it Dave that's at White Bear Studios now? He's the guy who's owned it for ages. Okay. And they were in Chorley for ages.
Oh yeah.
And now they're in the summer in Manchester. But yeah, Dave's a bit of a drummer himself, so he was like, you know, like, can you swing it a bit like, you know, like Questlove from The Roots? And I was like, okay. So you kind of like do not a take, but kind of like just play through it kind of thing. And he goes like, oh, I need it more, just like properly like sway it, you know. And so I'm like, okay, well, if he says sway it, I know what to do now, you know, and that kind of thing. I think as far as, you know, maybe it's just the fills that I play sometimes, you know, it might be that, or being able to know, like, oh, I need to be quieter in the verses and louder in the chorus, you know. You know, the particular track I'm thinking of, like Acid Eyes, that one I mentioned before, it was like the single from it. And I remember it being sort of like, in the verses it's very like mellow, just kind of keeping a beat, and then in the chorus it like explodes and kind of really comes out, and you know, was like playing really heavy on it, and like I knew a bit of the backstory behind the song and stuff, so it was a bit like, you know, like I was trying to reflect that in the drumming as well, I guess. Cool. So then obviously doing that with other people, like, you know, it's kind of like just finding the right part that fits like a hand in a glove, you know.
I missed out on White Bear Studios, actually. Do you remember that?
No.
It was in Chorley, but I wasn't really in music when that was around. But was it a good studio? Like
it's quite cool, actually. Yeah, the studio that they had there was quite nice because it was split into like 2 rooms. So you had like your live room that you'd be like recording the instruments in, and then you'd have your control room behind. But there was also like a couple of sound booths behind it as well that were like, you know, vocal booths or things like that. So they could obviously like patch through to those as well. But it was a nice little spot to be in. I don't know if it's the same kind of configuration now in Manchester, but it was by you know, there's the Tesco kind of in Exton, and there's a Mackey's in the car park of it. It's just up the hill from there.
Yeah, it was.
So I enjoyed kind of like
a pub now. They're on the same spot.
Yeah, nice pub. But it was quite cool, the little setup there.
Nice.
When you've been into these recording sessions, obviously you've recorded quite a lot of people and quite a lot of different producers as well. How much do you think a producer actually completes a song? Because sometimes you go in with your part, you're certain that part's going to work, and then a producer goes, "No, just change that note to this." And that one note just makes a hell of a difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think having done as many things as I could with, like, you know, I'm not talking like I'm the next big thing at all, and sometimes I do feel like, why am I doing this podcast with you guys? Like, there's so many other people who could be like on here like saying the same kind of thing, you know. But I certainly feel like those times where I've gone into a studio with my idea of what I think is right, I don't necessarily sort of think like, you know, well, my idea is my idea, don't tell me what to do. It's definitely like if it's for, you know, a solo artist and they've got an idea of what they want it to sound like, and they might be like, oh yeah, that's great as it is, and the producer might turn around and go, well, why don't you, like, you know, why don't you make that beat in the verse a bit more like spacious, you know, like let there be a bit more space to it, kind of thing. At which point it's like, oh, okay, like, so I know not to kind of put extra notes on the snare, or I'm not, you know, doing loads of like hi-hat work or loads of bass drum work. It's trying to like just get like a nice balance of, you know, what's going to keep this bit solid, you know, or keep the whole song solid, whatever, you know. And if it's one of those that, like, you know, a producer comes in and goes, you know, oh, I'm a drummer as well, like, I want to hear this. You know, I've never had that where I come in with an idea and it's like, oh no, we're not doing that. Yeah. It's always been like a team effort altogether, you know.
Or refinement slightly, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
What about drum solos? Have you ever written a drum solo?
not written one.
Wipeout, whatever it is.
I've not written one for a song before, but definitely live here and there you do them every now and again when people allow you to. But definitely like Pilots, we do Get Back by the Beatles, but like at the end we'd like I sort of get a bit of like a moment to kind of like show off for a sec. And so as much as I can do, I try and like obviously think of, you know, I keep it like all the ideas to things that I know to play easily and that kind of still fit with the song and the right feel and everything like that. There's only been one or two times where you do a drum solo and eventually it sort of falls down the hill and you have to just then like get to a finishing point, you know. I've done it in covers band, like is like, you know, when they're all like, one more song, and it's like, we ain't got any more songs. Like, you know, all right, Jono's going to do a solo, so I'd take like 2 minutes, you know, or something like that. But the last headline gig that Pilots did, we were at the Conti and did this Get Back and, you know, get to the solo bit, and must have gone on for about 5-10 minutes. Like the boys could have gone to the bar and for a wee and back, you know, by the time that I was only just getting around to sort of getting close to finishing that song.
Is that when you just get lost in the moment? They're fucking loving this. I'll have a bit of this. Fuck it off.
kind of. It is a bit like, you know, you do get a moment of like, hey, check me out, but equally thinking, well, I've got to play because the other guys are still playing it, you know, like at the same time. I've not had to write any solos, but it's always been like writing stuff where, you know, I go in with an idea of like, oh, I want to play this big fill there, and the producer goes, can you do that later on in song? You know, it's like the song needs to build to that point rather than do it like straight into that fill.
I think it was well known within the band that I don't like taking shit. I made it very obvious. I'm not going to tell you how.
I think it's just clever, and it's always just a little tweak, isn't it? Like, there's never like anything massive a producer goes like. It's always like, okay, you've come up with that really good guitar part. I'm going to double it with a keyboard, and then it just brings it out so much more in the track without any editing really having to go into it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a nice thing having a producer there. Definitely, like Tom for us with Pilots and stuff. He's incredible at kind of like, you know, at times he's gone like, oh yeah, can we like. Can you, with that harmony there, can you put like a third above it and a fifth above it and maybe a seventh above it, you know, and you start doing all these. I get up there with my vocal range sometimes, and, you know, there was a moment where sort of like during the recording time yesterday, I was like, oh, I've got this like idea for the oohs and ahs, like in the, there's a bit where it comes down in the middle of the song, and I kind of did like, can I just try something? And the boys in the back of the room are like, yeah, just go for it, John. You're class at what you do, whatever, you know. Genuinely, I've not been paid to say that, and you know, honestly. And Tom kind of goes like, yeah, go on, try it, kind of. So do one, then double it, then the next harmony, double it, then the next harmony, double it, you know. And it's a thing that sometimes I find funny that, you know, he's like so open to that. Like I know other people who would be like, oh no, like I know what I want to hear, like just leave it out for now, you know. And then if it comes, we'll come back to it and do it again.
Yeah, I mean, when I worked with Sugar House, it was always it was a similar sort of thing. It was a bit of an eye opener because I'd always sort of like self-produced or worked with a mate round their house. Yeah. So when I went in with them, like they're very blunt but not rude, and it was like I came up with this part. He said, "Right, have you got an idea of what you want to do for the lead?" I was like, "Yeah, just roll the chorus, I'll get it." So I played it. Literally stopped it after about 2 seconds and went, no, that's not it. I was like, Jesus, right, okay.
I wrote this song, it's my idea.
I wasn't like that. I was just like, okay, what do you think? And just handed him the guitar, and he just, it wasn't much different to what I came up with. Yeah. But it was, right, I think you were on the right lines, but let's go with this. And it was like, right, okay, yeah, that part's better.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah. I definitely had that. Like on Millie's stuff, it was funny that kind of like one song was, you know, it's like a bit of an instrumental thing, and it was quite dynamic. And I was like, kind of not had any ideas for like a full kit sound, but like maybe like a floor tom and some cymbal swells and like, you know, twinkly sounds and things like that. And they were like, oh, okay, I hadn't thought of that, you know. And I was like, oh, right. Like, that's funny, like catching other people off guard when, like, you know, I come up with an idea maybe, and just like, it's just my feeling. They could by all means like say, just go, no, like, yeah, it is funny, isn't it? What
It's
you,
that
what
fine
you
balance,
run
I
into.
think, isn't
Yeah.
it? It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
You definitely need a bit of that.
I think sometimes like bands and solo artists can be a bit guilty
Yeah.
of making a song sometimes too long, can't they? I think, and then it's like chopping them parts down a bit.
Definitely,
making it more concise.
I can recall like my old college tutor Dan had this track called I think it was Hollywood, and it's out there just by a band. It was a little band called Ayahuasca Trials, and I was like, I don't really get the name, but okay, whatever. You know, like I didn't get it, and but it was kind of like him just like getting some solo stuff out, but as a band really, and it had this like shuffly thing to it, and then like the ending feels like it goes on for a day and a half, you know. You know, but it was just like all like it was all like lots of vocal harmonies and bits like that, you know.
You see it with very established artists, don't you? They do like
Yeah.
a 7-minute one on an album.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can do what you want, to be fair. But I think if you're on the rise or whatever, it's difficult to pull that off.
Definitely.
You've got to do it. You've got to do it the right way so it doesn't sound
Yeah.
like that long. Like Champagne Supernova never feel like it's the same verse over and over and
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really feel like it. Like Hey
No.
Jude, even in
Yeah.
the recording, is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It now it does maybe because we've played it. I've played it so many times at gigs. Like you're like, oh God's sake, I'll just cut out a couple of verses and get straight to it.
Yeah. Just
Like-
get to the na-na-na bit when everyone can sing along, you know.
Yeah, there's so many songs out there that are like 6-7 minutes long,
Yeah.
and you think this is going to be a long shift. This, and then they're like, that's fucking brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So you said before that you don't feel worthy coming on the podcast, but I think somebody like you is like the embodiment of like local music, especially because you're in so many bands. You're in the
I guess,
scene,
yeah.
the original scene.
Yeah.
So talk us about like obviously your journey, then who you've worked with, and
Yeah,
sort
cool.
of what you're enjoying the most maybe at the minute in terms of, although that might be quite unfair, but you know, writing and whatever else.
I don't enjoy everything
Yeah,
equally,
yeah,
but yeah, started out kind of like as sort of, so I was doing stuff with a jazz big band to start with. That was always like good fun. I got a call on the way here to sort of like help some jazz folks out again earlier today. Sort of in college, being in like my own bands here and there, and then it's kind of like uni where I kind of was in a spot where I was doing the things at like uni that you have to do, or like the little gigs that you do there, and bumping into people that you work with like normally. I'd gone from doing all these like funny sort of odd bits and bats of stuff before that in college, and then like college mates of mine went to uni with me, and they all found their own bands and went off their own way. So it was a bit like, oh, what do I do now? So I then found sort of like I had got past the whole thing of being in bands, from having people sort of like just be unreliable and stuff, where you go like, oh, we're gonna do a rehearsal like tomorrow afternoon, like are you gonna be there? Yeah, I'll be there. Like not even half an hour before, oh, I'm picking my missus up from the airport, you know what I mean? Or she's been away on holiday, or you know, my mum's had an accident or something, and you think like, oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that, like, you know, I completely understand. But it's when they sort of get to the fifth time, and, oh, she's fallen over.
Might not be true.
Are you sure? This is the fifth time now. But yeah, so and done like drum teaching and stuff along the way. But it was that whole like doing that whole bands thing kind of then. I just fell out with it after a while, and I was like, I want to do my own thing. So when I was in uni, it was a lot of the time like people that go, oh, we've got this assessment coming up and I need a drummer for it. Are you free to do it? And I go like, yeah. Or, you know, I'm still finding my own thing at the moment, but if you need someone, like, obviously let me know. I mean, my missus, she's always like, you know, oh, I asked you that one time, you never came and did it. But yeah, it's funny because like we went to uni together, and she's an amazing singer and musician as well. But
right,
she
are you in a band with her then? Or
no,
any projects? Is that
I nearly was.
I nearly was.
She's a music teacher, so she likes to kind of like stay in education, and that's kind of my next thing, I think, at the moment. I'm not looking at putting music down at all. I still want to do gigs, still want to, get to the dream, that kind of thing. I'll get to that in a sec. But yeah, it's always been like a lot of then when I was in uni, sort of slotting in and out of things. Had some friends that had a covers band. I've mentioned a couple of times already, and they were always like, oh, Jono, can you come and like just dep for like one gig? Our drummer can't make it, and so then it ended up being sort of like, all uni happened. COVID hit. It was a bit like, now what? So it was lots like online drum teaching, things like that. Practicing most of the day, a lot of the time. Trying to just like take my frustrations out, being stuck inside all the time, that kind of thing. Didn't do well in COVID. And then it sort of like when that all sort of cleared, it was then like this covers band called me up again. The covers band I'm on about, Lee, as well. So we'll get to that in a sec as well. Because so they then sort of like, oh, can you come and like, it was kind of towards the end of COVID. It was like, can you come and cover some rehearsals? The guy they'd switched drummers once already to another guy who then was finding it tricky he wouldn't really interact with the rest of the band. It was just like he was the drummer and that was that, Right. And sometimes they go like, oh, can you like, give it some more kind of thing. Like we feel like we can't hear you or anything. And it got to a point one time where he was like, don't tell me how to play drums or this lot. And, he wouldn't join in with like the banter in the band and stuff like that. So it ended up being a thing that kind of like, as it all sort of came to a head with him, after doing those rehearsals and stuff, it was sort of, hey, Jono, would you be up for kind of being our drummer for a little while? So I was like, well, I've got nothing else otherwise. Before COVID, I'd done lots of like, done lots of sort of club nights, doing bongos and sax stuff, things with other musicians like that, running open mics here and there, spot gigs here and there, that kind of thing. Little functions, things like that, every now and again. But otherwise, it was a lot of sort of that, like, just, little bits before COVID. And then I was like, oh, now I'm going to have something that's kind of like either once a month or maybe every other weekend or whatever. It ended up being every weekend that I would go out. And, after that, it was like the next job that I took. It was, where are you playing this weekend? Oh, I'm in, this place in Blackpool. Where are you playing this weekend? Some place in Lancaster. And it was dead nice doing that for 3 years and doing all these like, working clubs and things like that. And it's a lovely, like, friendly circuit to go around. You bump into the same people. Like, how's it going? Like, yeah, good. Doing like showcases and things like that. Which brings me on to like how me and Lee have met before. So we did like a it was, what was it? Showcase thing. That was it. In Bamber Bridge. And
what was it for?
So basically, you get.
You'll have a better. I was just there to play drums. That was it.
Basically, when you go to the working men's clubs, Laura Summers spoke about this.
Mm-hmm.
You go to these showcase events to see if they want to book you, and then they take you into a little room, check out your insurances and everything. Go through everything. Have you got public liability and all that sort of business? Are you pat tested and all that sort of thing? And they're going to book you to play in their clubs. So I think you do like was it a 20-minute set or something like that?
Small, like, small superset kind of thing, wasn't it? And you were playing earlier on in the set, and then I think we were one of the last few on.
As County Pilots or
no? This was a covers band called Macapaka. It was called.
What was it called?
Macapaka.
Wow.
Macapaka Party Band.
Nice.
So the singer, he had a son who'd passed away some years before, and so before he'd passed away, they kind of started this little like duo thing, him and his wife, and then started like made it into a band kind of thing. And they were like, oh, what should we call it? And he loved like In the Night Garden that was on CBeebies all the time. So it was always like, what should we call it? And his favourite character was Macapaka. So that's kind of how that started. So then they'd had like a couple of other like extra members here and there, like a drummer that had been pretty solid throughout. Didn't want to keep doing the gigs and stuff. He was always away from his missus, and kind of they liked having the time together and that kind of thing. Got this other drummer during COVID, or just before COVID, and then obviously he stopped. So then it was me for like 2-3 years, and it was nice doing like the first year was like, oh, I was thinking like all the places that we've played now, and then the next year it was like, so where are we going next year? And he's like, pretty much all the same places again. And I was like, right, okay, well, what's, and finance came into it a bit. I was like, oh, I'd love if we could go out for a bit more kind of thing. And it, unfortunately, like his wife was the keys player and like sort of second vocalist, and she ended up struggling with cancer and stuff like that. And so she eventually like passed away from it, and it was just really tough like that time. I think like lots of losses that I've had along the way, going way back to the jazz. I keep going back in circles doing this. Jazz band stuff. A mate of mine, Matt, he had like a heart condition, and like he passed away some years ago. I think it's like nearly 6-7 years ago now. But I've always felt like kind of I'm carrying the torch for him a bit, in everything I do. But yeah, and so then doing the covers band was kind of part of that. Like, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep doing this, and feel like I've always kind of worked hard at like the drumming particularly because of that. So then doing the cover stuff, it went down to sort of 4 of us, and we're thinking like, oh well, the split's nice because it's all evens, like we all get a good chunk each kind of thing. We'd go pretty far out sometimes. We'd play like play a spot in Liverpool. Our bass player was a massive Beatles fan, as I am as well, but he's really good at like all the history of the Beatles, and it's one of the first venues that like John, Paul and George all met at and all this kind of thing. And so he was like, oh yeah, we get to play there every year. Yes, get in there. So he was always looking forward to that one particularly. We'd always do a very like heavy Beatles set there as well. That was always cool, which was nice for me, sort of like raised on that and knowing all the songs straight away naturally. Sort of then, the 3rd year, it got to the point I was like, started to sort of fall out with it a bit, and Pilots had started at that point. It's like 2-3 years ago, prior to sort of today now, actually, I'm thinking. And so Pilots were starting up. They were starting to realise I was going to sway that way and start doing Pilot stuff more. I think Connor was starting to ask about stuff as well. Like, oh, can you come and play on this, or I've got like a bigger gig coming up, or it's in the works, and would you come and play for me kind of thing. He'd asked me for a couple of like little, when he does acoustic sets on like Friday, Saturday nights, and I was always like, oh, I'm really sorry, I've got a covers gig, like I can't. So for a little while it had been sort of like getting asks off other people, and I'd done the covers band and been like happy to do that. Had never really seen it as like, they were always like, we need to be your number one priority kind of thing. And had always sort of been very like, I'll do that, but then, I do want to do other stuff as well. Like, and I had kind of grown tired of doing like the same sets, the same venues, the same people every time, that kind of thing. I think the only other places that we played one year was like Stanley Park Bandstand was one. I think there's a place in Manchester one time, or Oldham, somewhere like that, by a train station. There's a pub across the road from it or something. Like all these other little places that sort of we hadn't played before, and we went and played and still had like the best gig that we could, but maybe the crowds were just like kind of not up for it, things like that, And so then ended up sort of like going into the Pilots pretty heavily. Getting asked to do stuff with Conor Banks, stuff with Will Edgar, kind of came out of a gig with Conor Banks because Will supported him at one point. And
so moving from the covers, sorry, I've interrupted you.
No, it's fine.
Moving from sort of always being the covers into everyone's original projects. Obviously, the differences are obvious. Do you prefer the original gigs now? Obviously, you probably get paid a lot more for the covers as we kind of, that's our bread and butter.
Yeah.
But is this what's magical to you with the original gigs?
I think like it's nice to like have my own identity as a drummer, rather than think like I'm playing a song where I need to sound like Ringo from the Beatles, or I need to sound like the drummer from the Jam when we're playing Town Called Malice, or sound like whoever the heck Ed Sheeran's drummer is. It's always changing, things like that when you do covers. And so then it's nice to sort of do those things like, Connor's stuff started out sort of like more covers, Pilot started out more covers, like, we did start out as more sort of covers orientated.
And you slowly work your new tunes in kind of thing.
Yeah. I think the first time that like Pilots met up, we met at Rock Hard Studios in Blackpool, and we were sort of in like the main big sort of live room when you go in there, and everything's like really top quality there, like really nice sort of little rehearsal rooms there, and nice kits and good equipment, good little PA systems in every room, and then we'd sort of all got plugged in and set up, cymbals are in the right place and everything, like, and before we've even like got into what we'd all been practicing, we started playing loads of other covers that like we hadn't prepared, and we all just knew and could kind of like jam along, so that was like the fun part of that, and then the more that we went along, I knew Matt Hall from Pilots. He has done loads of solo stuff for years. I've seen him do like open mics, and he was in a band called Rosa years ago.
Is it Matt that writes his own stuff as well? Because has he got his own separate Spotify?
Yeah, Matt Hall has Matt has his own stuff that he's written, like his solo stuff. I think it's just more to kind of like it's always songs that he has like written, and he just wants to put them somewhere. I don't think they're ever. I think he's not really ever sort of like been, I'm definitely gonna go as like a solo artist at any point. It's always been like it's just to put stuff out there. So and then it's just kind of been that he writes with Adam, and they kind of come up with like some lines together, or like lyrics and guitar parts and things like that, and then they construct a bit of a demo, and so we're going to just touch on Character Pilots, because we are going to get the band on, or as many members of the band that we can get in. But so love the tunes, especially Burning, as we spoke about before. Go check it out. But so the big 60s influences, which I think we all notice when we listen to them. Obviously, you say you're massively influenced by the 60s, but I'm guessing other members of the band are as well. Yeah, definitely. And
how do you sort of enjoy putting in those 60s covers with the original tunes as well? And I imagine they work together pretty well.
Yeah, they do complement each other really well.
Who is it that's got the biggest 60s influence in that band? Because obviously it is so heavily 60s influence.
I'm not going to say it's me at all, because it's not at all. I would say it's probably Matt and Adam the most, the two main vocalists otherwise. I do a bit of backing and stuff, but they definitely are like more, they are always chatting about, like, if it's that we get onto stuff about the Beatles that we're all chatting about, they know like every little detail. Whereas I feel like I only have like a surface level knowledge of the Beatles or any 60s stuff.
Or just Ringo Starr knowledge.
Literally, that's just me. They're like, do you remember when Paul did that? And George, and and I'm like, what about when Ringo did that thing? And they're like, oh yeah. And that's it.
Yeah, shut up, John.
Yeah, literally.
How do you find that, obviously, when you go to venues like the Ferret, obviously all types of music's welcome. When you do the covers, people still massively enjoy the 60s, don't they? The dance alongs in that. How do you find the original 60s tunes go down at these original venues?
They do go down pretty well, actually. We do. So Ferret's quite a regular one. We get a lot of supports. We're trying to like break the wall through to kind of do like more headlines there if we can. Don't know if they're watching. No, I'm joking.
Come on, Matt, get him a gig.
Come on, Matt Forbert. No, I love Matt, and he's class and like really nice. I've done like open mics and stuff and worked with him really well. I get on like House on Fire with Matt Forbert. I'm just dead quiet, so I don't always like end up chatting to everyone at the Ferret. But those do go down well. We're usually on like a lot of indie gigs with other bands and stuff. So like the Cases, Outer Lines, Forensics, stuff like that. We actually share a bass player with Forensics at the moment, so we get on with all of them as much as we can do. Obviously, there's that like friendly competition there, here and there, but we find the places that we play, whether it's the Ferret, Bootleg Social in Blackpool, we've done Off the Square in Manchester once or twice, and we find like that's a hard venue because it's very like long and thin, and it's just like a big stone box in there. It's a bit weird, just really like echoey in there. But they do go down pretty well, and you know we get lots of people suddenly like, you know, come down to our gigs a bit more, you know, like rather than just having like people who have heard of us because we're playing with the band that they're watching.
I see.
You know,
you've got your own little.
We're getting a bit more of a following. Yeah, it's taking a little while,
with original venues like the Ferret, Conti, Bootleg, like you've said, how, because I've never really been in many of these venues. How do you think the original music scene compares to the rest of the country? Is it strong? What maybe some things that you would change about it, or?
I mean, each to their own. Do you know what I mean? But I think like the thing with original music is like people love to hear it because it's, you know, it's like what you're gonna hear the rest of the time after that. Do you know what I mean? It's like all being well, when you put music out, you're trying to get that following, but you're also trying to be like, you know, well, we're trying to, you know, put our stamp on the map a little bit, you know, like trying to make our mark a little bit. And, you know, it's then for, you know, people who either listen along and sort of sing along at gigs or whatever and come down to the gigs, you know, it's for them to make the judgment of like, is that good? Is it not? Like, do we enjoy it? Do we not? You know, I think, we enjoy doing it as much as we can and just try and like enjoy every gig that we do our originals at. I think like, you know, everyone's so used to hearing covers. Not there's anything wrong with that either of you.
I agree,
but yeah,
I get sick to the back teeth of certain songs. Well,
I was going to say, like it happens, doesn't it?
You're in a little box in covers because as soon as you step out of that box and do a slightly obscure one, sometimes you can get kicked right back into your box, can't you?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like if you go and play an obscure cover in an originals gig, people are like, "Oh, what a song!"
Yeah.
You do it at a covers gig, like people are like, "What the fuck's this?"
Yeah, literally.
Like, get back to playing Seven Nation Army.
Exactly. You know, we've had that once or twice. We've done like, you know, we've done some covers that people are a bit like, I'm not sure about that, you know. And I can't think of like one particular. I think we did. There was one Beatles track that we did, and it's called like she said, and it's a bit like it's a bit psychedelic at one point in the middle of the song, but it's. I remember us doing it and kind of. It just felt flat. You're just like, why we did like Jet by Paul McCartney at one point, and it was like, it's a great tune when Macca does it, but when we did it, it's just like, I don't know. We did it at Bootleg Social in Blackpool, and it just seemed a bit like we played it, got to the end, and everyone just kind of politely like, well done, you know, well played. But
and that's at an original venue. The
Bootleg, like, you know, you get some people that sort of like, you know, they are really good at picking the right covers to go in an original set.
Is that a challenge in itself then, is it?
I would say so, yeah. I think if you're trying to find the right covers, it's also finding it like, will it match the set? Will it match the kind of music that everyone else is playing? Is everyone going to enjoy that? You know, is it one that we can play and everyone's going to sing along or dance along or whatever? You know, like I think more sort of often going forward, we've done a lot more like, let's do the covers that people know in the set, you know. But our set's like a lot more originals, I would say.
I think you're trying to find that cover that's popular enough that you're not sick of it. Like, so like we've done When You Were, like when I was gigging at the Ferret with Defined By, we done When You Were Young by the Killers.
Oh, tune.
Now that is below Bright Side, Somebody Told Me Human and all that lot, but it's a great fucking tune.
It's a great tune.
We have 2 rhythm guitars on it, and we tried it with Flash Floods. And we've only got 2 guitars in the band, and it just did not sound as good.
Oh, man.
So it just like, I don't know, with that extra guitar, and one of them had humbuckers, one of them had singer coils, it just lifted it and made it huge. Our lead guitarist was just able to sit right above it. So it's so weird being in 2 different bands playing the same song. So I totally got what you meant when you said when we did Jet with Pilots, it worked for Macca, but it didn't work for us. It's weird, isn't it? It's like just one slightly different singer, and it just changes a game for you completely as well.
100%.
What would you say your best gig has been?
Oh, best gig. And
why
there's
as well?
There's been a few, to be fair. I once did. I worked with. There's a guy called Harvey Brittain that I was playing with for a while. This was like before COVID. I think it was like a year or 2 before all that hit, and we did. It's definitely up there, like in terms of like sentimental for me, because my grandma, it was one of the last gigs she got to see me in before like COVID hit and everything kind of shut down. But we did the Light Switch on in Preston, and I can remember like sort of like being really nervous for that. Lots of nerves, kind of. I was a bit like, oh, I don't want to do it. I'm not playing it, or this, that. But it was like, you know, we run up on stage and do this sort of like big fancy intro thing, and we're playing along to this. There's lots of like backing tracks and things like that. We came out and played sort of like two of his originals and like a cover or two. And there was like something like 7,000 people, all like, it was outside the front of the Harris Museum in town in Preston.
A big screen as well at that
yeah,
one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Just watch yourself on thing.
Literally, yeah, you can watch it back. And like, you know, I've even gone down YouTube at one point and seen like a funny, like, you know, someone taking a video and it's like he's just there in front of her, like while she's filming and stuff. And I'm in the background like, oh, you know, like, but honestly, yeah, I'd say that one, like in terms of like my family were there. I think, you know, like I've done gigs with Connor that I'm like, oh, that's wicked that I've done that. Yeah. You know,
I think did you do Charlie Little Theatre with him?
Yeah, we did.
That
yeah,
seemed quite good from what I saw. Yeah,
that was cool. That was a good one. Good crowd there. I'd say like we did. Pilots did Choose Yard in Preston. That's just opened stuff more recently, and that was a good one. I would even say like the most recent one we've done at Conti. I think we were panicking about sort of the ticket sales and stuff before that. We were sort of looking at like a week or two before. It was like, it was only like 40 something tickets.
Oh, what, can you track it on an app or something?
Kind of, yeah. I think
one of
them
Spotify
streams all over
Skiddle, yeah, it was on Skiddle.
Oh, right,
Isn't it mad though? Like, because all of a sudden, sometimes you see those sales go and you're like, we're looking a bit dodgy here. And the next thing, like we played the Loom in Burnley, and like she was saying, like, yeah, there's only been 5 tickets sold so far. So in the week of the gig, like 30 people bought tickets. It's like, could you just save us the fucking heart attack?
Yeah, stop making me stress like a week or two before. I can remember that week before the Conti gig more recently, and yeah, we were looking at it, it was 200 sold out, and we've only sold like 70 something. Like, it's going to be empty, and we're just thinking like, no. And then sort of like in the week it got to 100 and something, so we thought like, oh, okay, we're about halfway now. And then I think on the night we sold a lot more tickets as a result, so it meant the room was pretty full. But it was just a nice night that like we'd done headline gigs at the venue in Penwitham where the library used to be. It's a little small box room, but it's dead nice to play in, a little small stage. And then we'd done that for 2 last year and the year before, and then this year we were like, we want to go like upper level, like we want to take it upper level. So we're like, well, we'll go for Conti and see how we do. And like I say, the room was like it was packed in there.
Nice.
Lots of people came down. Like, you know, my dad's, the younger guys at Dad's Cricket Club again. They were sort of like, you know, they were loving it. Like every song finished and was like, pilots after it, you know. Even last night there was 3 of us at like the cricket club watching the World Cup, and at half time they were like, pilots, and then at half time as we walk up to the bar. So funny. But yeah, I would probably say sort of like, you know, if it was to give one kind of for the main things that I've done recently, it would be like the Conti one for the Pilots. Will Edgar, we did the ramp just the other night in Horwich, and that was pretty good. Like, there's people like of loads of different ages. And, like,
I need to listen to Will's tunes actually. I've not had the time yet to have a listen.
Nice like acoustic sort of feel. He kind of plays every instrument, so when he releases, it's kind of just like he plays everything, and then we get hired to play the parts, you know. And obviously make it our own a little bit as well. But nice sort of like easy listening. And then like, you know, with Connor, I would say probably I think we played Conti one time. That was pretty good do. Chorley Theatre, that was a good one.
Didn't you do Riva Show Bar with him at one point as well in town? Was it Riva Show Bar?
I can't think. I think we did the Playhouse in Preston.
That was a long Playhouse, yeah.
That was good. I mean, it wasn't as busy, but it was still a nice gig to do, definitely. Like I'd even say like with Will, we did what's it called? Made in Manchester festival, and it's like where Bolton Football Ground is. There's like that Astro Sports Centre, and like
Bolton Arena.
That's it. And we were sort of like we all parked up and then kind of walked around the back of it, and this big festival stage was on. and there was some management guy or something that his dad was talking to, and so like might have more sort of bigger, higher profile gigs that way. But yeah, probably having played those, they'd be like the top ones to answer your question.
Yeah.
I can think of like gigs I've been to that I'm like are really cool. It's a bit out there, but like I've been to a couple of Paloma Faith gigs.
Right, okay. It's out there, yeah.
I'm mates with her drummer Daisy. So Daisy's been taking she's taken a year or two off because she's been she had a little girl recently. So I was like, oh, it's dead sweet. So me and a mate went to one of the, I think it was a Manchester date at the start of one of the tours. It was a couple of years back. And then me and my mum went to a Liverpool show. It was Liverpool Empire, I think it was. And we were just like, oh, why don't we like get like a gift or something just to say like thank you for the 2 sets of tickets, basically. Like I hadn't had to pay for it, and it just been kind of on the day. She'd gone, do you want to come down?
Right,
I'll give you a +1. And so it was nice doing the Liverpool one, because we kind of like after the gig, it was like the last show of the tour, and like it was good to just like catch her. My mum's a massive Paloma Faith fan, so it was nice to take my mum and sort of like, you know, let her have a night to sort of enjoy a gig, you know, and see an artist that she loves. But I equally got to see my mate like, you know, bring the house down.
Yeah,
she was class,
cool,
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny just having those mates that do all that stuff as well. You
Definitely.
know, it makes me want to get there.
Yeah, 100%.
I had a strange moment like that, but I didn't know the guy was playing. So I grew up in Ipswich, and when I was at college, there was 2 drummers we had like were known as the guys.
The guys,
to drum.
yeah.
Probably all the drummers were really wicked, to be fair. But there was this lad called James Brown who was really, really technically good.
Yeah.
Knew exactly what to play.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone wanted to be in a band with him.
Yeah.
So me and the missus actually went to go and see Ed Sheeran in 2018. In Ipswich.
Yeah.
Thought, go and see his hometown show. I'll go and stay with me mum and dad for a couple of days. And he had this competition running to support him beforehand. And so the first band comes on. It's this girl from like Colchester way. I look at the drummer, I was like, I recognise him. And then like I've gone on his Instagram. It's the picture of the sound check.
No way.
I was like, you bastard. I sent him a message and said, you fucking prick, I'd pay to come and watch you.
Where was my free ticket?
But no, to be fair, it was class. Like watching your mate, like when you see that, I was like, I went to college with him.
It's
like,
wicked.
I was going to my missus. I went to college with him. I've been in a band with him for a bit.
Yeah.
When you spoke before about making it, you said about going a bit bigger. I've sort of linked this in with another question as well. What's the biggest buzz you get out of, obviously you're a mainstay in a band like the County Pilots. What's the biggest buzz you get from that? Is it people singing the songs back? Is it the streams? Is it, you know, selling some merchandise, whatever?
Yeah.
And as a segue to that, what is making it to you? What's going to push you to, what do you want to do next?
Yeah, I think like the buzz with Pilots is like just getting to write our own music and like record and release it. Be a band that kind of enjoys doing that.
Yeah,
you know,
rise together sort of thing.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of be back. I feel like I've fallen in love with being in a band again. As much as I still love sort of dipping out and doing like Will and Connor's stuff and that kind of thing, it's definitely just like the whole just playing live like fully like and trying to get to that point where like, you know, we go to a gig and like, you sing it, do you know what I mean, where the crowd can sing our song back.
Have you had any of them? Just a few maybe at the concert?
I think we've had times where, you know, we've played a song and, you know, people have sang along with it, you know, to the point you can hear them over your in-ear monitor mix. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh wow, that's amazing. But yeah, definitely. And then but I think it's definitely building to, you know, like my dream has always been to kind of like be on tour and play like big venues and stuff like that. I've got mates who've done it, and you know, I just like, I look at, if I go to any gigs and stuff, like me and my missus have watched like 1975 a couple of times in Manchester, and I watch them and I'm like, I could do that. Do you know what I mean? I went and watched Busted when they'd reformed, and it was just like, I just got a solo ticket. I was like, sack it, I'm going to go. So I was like, well, it's around the time of my birthday, and I was like, you know, it's end of last year, and it was quite funny because I was just like, you know, like I've wanted to see Busted since I was like 4 years old anyway. Then they split up. Now they're back together. I'm like, well, it'd be stupid not to go and see him. And they'd already been on tour once, like a few years before, and kind of done all their old stuff as it sort of originally sounded. And then they kind of like have revamped all the stuff that they've there's like a new album that's like Greatest Hits 2.0, and they did it like collaborated like Jonas Brothers and Simple Plan and Bowling for Soup are on one, and like Wheatus are on another one as well.
Have you seen Bowling for Soup recently?
No.
Oh my god! Like I saw him.
I've seen like clips on Instagram, but
I saw him at Slam Dunk, and like you remember, it was always like the skinny. The whole band was skinny apart from the bass player.
Oh, they're all like.
They've
really
now ballooned
guys.
out. It was like the
them.
most American thing I've ever seen.
Literally.
But like, I was just like, this isn't how I remember you. So I think in the end we did sneak off and see Enter Shikari. But like that was a hell of a show, to be fair. But
Shikari at class. No, but yeah, it was cool like seeing Busted, and the guy who's their drummer, like he was a fan first, you know what I mean? But like watching those, I'm like, I could do this. Like sat in the AO Arena in Manchester on one side, and I'm like, you know, looking to my left, and it's like, how far off is that stage over there? And you know, I could be on that stage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does get to that point like where you
Definitely.
think, yeah, why? I'm no worse than them. I'm no better than them, but I'm no worse than them.
I think it's a bit of luck and timing with that kind of thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Me and my missus are always kind of like butting heads about it sometimes, like not in a bad way, but it's just like, it's constructive, you know, like she is really good at kind of like, you know, keeping me on like a human level, definitely, which I do need a lot of the time, because otherwise I'm just in the clouds all the time. But I still dream of doing it, do you know what I mean? And like I chat to friends of mine who do it. My mate Emily she's the drummer on the Voice Kids UK and stuff, which is like, you know, she's worked with Will and that kind of thing. So she's like, oh, like you're in like a dream situation there. And he's on the way up, and he's doing well, and he's a nice guy to work with, and so on, you know. So it's funny that like you do sort of, I think like ability wise, I still think I personally have a ways to go to get to that spot, and whether that's just, you know, falling on like luck and it being fortunate that like you're in the right place at the right time, or you speak to that person and they go like, oh, by the way, they need a drummer. That kind of thing, you know, like with Daisy with Paloma, when she was like, oh, I'm going to take time off, I'd like half jokingly went, well, if you need someone to cover you like this, and so we're laughing in the back of like a pub in Manchester, and she was like, oh, actually, you know, like a little bit, I could tell there was that kind of in her head, she was a bit like, oh, you know, maybe actually, but yeah, so because she's taking a bit of time off and that kind of thing, there's someone else doing it kind of thing, and I don't know who that person is, but I know people who would do that, and you know, who would be like, oh, can you cover me for this, like like
you said, because you are in many bands and many projects, you just never know where that can snowball you to. So you know, you're in a good position in that sense, I guess.
My main thing is just like staying human and just enjoying everything I play. Do you know what I mean? And like, as long as I'm enjoying that, like I'm kind of just happy like playing music just generally, rather than kind of thinking like, oh, I've got to get better, I can't make mistakes, I want to get to that stage. It's just like, just enjoy it again. Absolutely.
You know? So where can we find you, John, on all the socials and whatever else?
You can find me on Instagram mainly. I toyed with Twitter at one point, didn't really happen.
Twitter, what, X?
Yeah,
I tried
Twitter,
it before,
X, all that lot.
you end up changing that back, you know.
Really?
Oh, really? Yeah. You just end up talking to yourself on there, don't you? Just bot accounts that follow me, man.
Yeah, I didn't do very well, so I think I deleted it ages ago anyway. So I'm on TikTok as well. Don't post very often on there.
Facebook drummer like meme, like viral things. Or
I've seen there's too many drummers out there doing that stuff, and I'm a bit like, it's not like, you know, I don't know how I can stand out really. No. So I kind of just go on it as like, you know, to scroll and stuff. But probably should look at posting a bit more often on there.
It's hard work though, isn't it?
Yeah. Social media is a full-time job in itself.
I'm trying to chat to again my mate Emily. She's really good at like coaching musicians that are trying to get out there a bit more, and she's like, her and I chat a lot of sort of like how, you know, she's like, how are you doing like posting this week and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, I keep doing, you know, like a drums dump a lot of the time, just like, you know, I've been playing here and here and here. Here's all the pictures of it. Here you go, have it. You know, like every weekend. But, you know, it'd be nice to have something sort of like, you know, I've done a rehearsal tonight midweek, and here's a gig at the weekend or a church at the weekend or whatever. You know, it's definitely one of those that like, So overall, it's kind of just like, I've got a drum page on Facebook, but doesn't really, a lot of my Instagram's tied to that. Then Instagram itself, then TikTok. I have got YouTube, but I don't post a lot on that either. So.
And what's a handle?
Yeah, the handle is, I think for Instagram it's at jon.raynor.drums or something like that.
We'll put it on the screen for
yeah,
you.
It'll be on somewhere.
Here.
Again, it's it's here or here. I think the drum page is just like Jon Raynor -drums, or something like that. TikTok, it's Jon Raynor TT. Well, it looks like TT, but it's like just TT. It's meant to be for TikTok. Yeah, I think that's about it. Otherwise,
And County Pilots.
County Pilots. We're on Instagram. We are on TikTok as well. We're on Facebook. You can find us there. Yeah, if you find us on Instagram, we've got a link tree to all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, good stuff. Right, in a couple of sentences, advice you'd give to an upcoming drummer, a young drummer like yourself, starting out at a very young age.
Can I make it more of like an upcoming musician generally?
Of course.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because, like, you know, it's very like singular drumming kind of thing. But yeah, I think if you are wanting to be like a good musician, generally at whatever instrument you're in, like whatever kind of projects you do, whatever stuff you do, as long as you're like a good listener, you can take constructive criticism, like, you know, pretty easily. Then, you know, that's kind of like the main thing for working. But the main advice I'd say, just have fun, just enjoy it. Like, it's not a competition, you know, as much as everyone makes it a competition. Like, don't let people get to you. No. Like, just enjoy it, have fun, play well, you know, genuinely just, I can't say it enough, just have fun playing music, because that's what it's there for, is to enjoy and just play. And just
you can get obsessed with all that, can't you?
Exactly.
Like, obsessed with being better, and then you just punish yourself constantly. It's just not... That it's no fun for anyone.
No, of course.
I got into a bit of a phase where I'm like, right, I've got to practice like the guitar a certain amount of hours a day, or like thing, but it ends up becoming like something on your tick list rather than actually just picking it up.
Rather than it being like, you know, something you enjoy, it becomes like a job or a chore,
and then you don't do it. So
and you kind of get dissuaded from it.
Yeah. I think I only practice now to learn songs, or just like I practice now to just jam. Because like I'll practice like one chord shape and then one scale, and that's all I'll do. I'll just go on a backing track on YouTube and just play along to it.
A mate of mine does that all the time. He's always on TikTok and like little lessons here and there of stuff. I'm always just like, just enjoy it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, on that note, do you want to have a little game?
Yeah,
don't need to be too long, this podcast.
No.
But, you know, if you're still here, then we might clip this up into a different...
this might be a separate clip, but this
is
just...
up in the comments if you're still here.
You're still here, yeah. Just tell us what minute you made it to.
Yeah.
Competitive giveaway.
Yeah.
Free pencil for those who made it to the end.
That's the one.
And a certificate in assembly.
It's going to be a signed Jon Raynor drumstick, surely. Big thanks for coming on, John. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it? So I do want you to come out and check. Well, you will with County Pilots, won't you? But come and check out our studio and that. But anything you want to leave us on? Are you happy we've covered everything?
No, just more than anything, just like enjoyed being here and like chatting to you guys about stuff, and hopefully it inspires people, and just get people to enjoy music as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
In fact, I'll just, before we finish, that logo, Jamie Smith, who was in the Forensics, the bass player, I think he was. He designed that logo for us.
No way.
So shout out, Jamie. There you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
And on that note, we'll see you again for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cool.